and Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Good evening, and may the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is our episode number 4 on the subject, the 144,000 going out of Egypt. I would like to begin our study, rule number 6, recorded in the writings of William Miller. It says, God has revealed things to come. God has revealed things to come by visions, in figures, and parables, and in this way, the same things are oftentimes revealed again and again by different visions or in different figures and parables. If you wish to understand them, you must combine them all in one. That statement is the same as recorded in on SR Pocket Edition on page 37, saying that the Bible reveals its tremendous truths in diverse ways, in numerics, in symbols and figures, in parables and allegories, in dreams and visions, in types and providences, is even more fully recognized in the anomalous experience of ancient Israel going into Egypt. In it, every informed Bible student discerns not mere happenstance, but purposive design wrought by the omnipotent hand of providence. Indeed, Joseph himself, the principal character in the great drama, so avouches, God did send me before you, he declares, to preserve life. Genesis 45, verse 5. The Shepherd's Rod greatly emphasized, and 1SR on page 66, it says, in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 11 and 12, speaking of the experience of the children of Israel, we read, now all these things happened unto them for ensamples, not only a part, but all these things happen unto them for ensamples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore, let him that thinketh that standeth take heed, lest he fall. If we are the people upon whom the end of the world is about to come, then their ensamples are written for our admonition. This is the reason why God led the children of Israel into Egypt and back again. Think how great the price to work out the picture. The lessons to be derived from these great examples are far greater than we have ever realized. Many thousands lost their lives to produce the picture, with the intention that many more thousands would be saved than those who perish. Let us therefore carefully study into the lessons that were intended for our learning and admonition. So here the Shepherd's Rod is emphasizing clearly the value of the types, the value of those historical events that had been recorded in the Bible. And for sure, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 11 and 12 is particularly and definitely applied to the last generation of men, to the people who will no longer to taste them. The Shepherd's Rod declared clearly in 1SR 226, saying, the types themselves are not the true object, no more than a photograph is, but it is a representation which pictures and unmistakable evidence the object in view. The Shepherd's Rod plainly telling here that the types are not the true object, but the types is employed by God to picture out with unmistakable evidence the true object in view, which is the antitype. And as far as the Shepherd's Rod is thus concerned, the true object in view in this study, going out of Egypt, is the 144,000 spiritual Israel, living saints, those who will no longer to taste death. I would like to read the statement in track number 8, page 30. saying just a short sentence. These unalterable truths of type and parable and the word of his testimony bring us face to face with the solemn reality that we are come to the time of the antitypical Passover and cleansing of the temple, and to the harvest of the world, the great and dreadful day of the Lord. The Spirit of God bids us with awful solemnity, get ready, get ready, get ready. For the first anger of the Lord is soon to come. His wrath is to be poured out and mixed with mercy, and ye are not ready. Rend the heart and not the garment. Early Writings, page 119. The shepherd's rod, plainly declaring, brothers and sisters, that the unalterable truths, true types, parables, as well as the testimony of the prophets, will be the one to bring us face to face with the solemn reality that we are come to the time of the antitypical Passover and also cleansing of the temple. Therefore, we'll be studying this subject through types, symbols, parables, as well as the testimony of the prophets. I remember the statement in the Great Controversy. I love so much that statement. In the introduction, it says, written in different ages by men who differed widely in rank and occupation and in mental and spiritual endowments, the books of the Bible present a wide contrast in style, as well as a diversity in the nature of the subjects unfolded. Different forms of expression are employed by different writers. Often the same truth is more strikingly presented by one than by another. And as several writers present a subject under varied aspects and relations, there may appear to the superficial, careless, or prejudiced reader to be discrepancy or contradiction, where the thoughtful, reverent student with clearer insight discerns the underlying harmony. We already read the admonition given by the voice of inspiration that we need to combine all of them as one, because the Bible as a whole never contradicts each other. There is an underlying perfect harmony. Herein, I would like to read this reading, the writings of William Miller. It says, it is true, there is a general harmony through the whole. In every page, in every book, we find the same important pillars of truth. We find the same God, the same Savior, the same Spirit described. We see human character unfolded with entire harmony and truth, and the two opposite states of men, the righteous and the wicked, from Abel and Cain, down to the judgment of the great day, clearly brought to view. In every book, we find the same promises to the one, and the same curses denounced upon the other. And although these writers live in different ages of the world, and about 1600 years apart from the first writer to the last, although there were between 40 and 50 of them in every grade of life, from the king on his throne to the poor fishermen, yet their enemies have not been able to show any discrepancy or disagreement that is not easily reconciled. What a wonderful statement, brothers and sisters. And that is why, since the Bible is the complete formula of the plan of redemption, according to 1 TG number 10, on page 18. The Bible contains the complete plan of salvation for all humanity. And how do I know this? I know it because its story begins with creation and ends with the earth made new. And between the first and the last pages of the Bible, then lies the complete formula for man's salvation and redemption. 1 TG number 10, page 18. And the shepherd says that the Bible as a whole, is self-defining. It says here, let us read the statement in track number 5 on page 36. Just as the alphabet lends itself to the fabrications of words, phrases, and sentences into a predetermined pattern of thought, sustained and coherent, likewise the Bible, when made wholly self-defining, marvelously builds its richly varied materials, types, symbols, parables, allegories, numerics, etc., into a towering revelation foreordained of perfectly coordinated life-saving truth. Accordingly, as every letter, every word, and every phrase of a sentence has its appointed part to play in giving coherent expression to the thought intended, just so has every scripture its appointed part in unfolding Bible truths. When each is carefully joined in its right relation in the picture of revealed truth, one leading on to and illuminating another, the great overall design stands out in all the solemn majesty of its mountainous finality and grandeur. Or, in other words, whatever the truth revealed through the types will not contradict to the prophecy revealed through symbols, as well as through the parables, as well as through the allegories, numerics. As a whole, the Bible is in perfect harmony. There's a statement that I would like to read here. It says, let's read this statement, that admonishing us to study closely the history as well as the prophecy. It says here, to know whether we have the true historical event, by William Miller. It says, to know whether we have the true historical event for the fulfillment of a prophecy. If you find every word of the prophecy after the figures are understood is literally fulfilled, then you may know that your history is the true event. But if one word lacks a fulfillment, then you must look for another event or wait its future development. For God takes care that history and prophecy that agree, so that the true believing children of God may never be ashamed. This reading, brothers and sisters, also the same with the statement saying that history is the complement of the prophecy. I would like to read that reading in the writings of Alonzo Jones. It says history. The history is the complement of the prophecy. And we need to set down both history and prophecy because God takes care of the history as well as the prophecy. So let's read that statement, a short statement in the writings of Alonzo Jones. I would like to read track number 12. Let's read the statement. Here in track number 12, on page 64 and page 65, the statement, history is the complement of the prophecy. And we need to set both history and prophecy. It says, history is the only true commentary on the prophecies. And the only true exposition of the prophecies is to set down together the history and the prophecy. Because history, as it really is but the complement of the prophecy as it is written. Now here in track number 12, page 64 and 65. In the light of these foregone fundamental facts, we should now be able to rightly evaluate the unfolding of the scroll and to intelligently match the page of prophecy with the page of history. I would like to read again. Track number 12, page 64 and 65. In the light of these foregone fundamental facts, we should now be able to rightly evaluate the unfolding of the scroll and to intelligently match the page of prophecy with the page of history. And the shepherd's rod plainly told us that one of the significance why the prophet had been commanded to write the vision in a tile, according to 1SR page 128, 1SR 128. It is engraved on a tile. It cannot be erased. The thought is that the prophecy will surely come to pass, and after it once becomes history, one cannot erase the things portrayed. It is there to stay through all ages. 1 SR page 128. Now, I would like to give you an example of that illustration given by the voice of inspiration, saying that after we found out the historical event does not exactly fits to the description of the Bible, then we may know that that is not the particular object in view. That is only employed by God to serve as the groundwork. Now, I would like to read it. 2TG number 6, page 15. 2TG number 6, page 15. And I think it is concerning the prophecy in Hosea chapter 1, verse 10. It says, "Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living God." And then it says to the next paragraph, "Let us here for a moment discuss the titles Judah and Israel. When superficially read, these titles are as a rule misconstrued and made to mean the identified Jews. But we must not be superficial readers and thinkers. Let us be deep Bible students. Now everyone knows that the identified Jews of today are but a handful, certainly not as the sons of the sea. The innumerable children of Israel therefore cannot be the unbelieving Jews of today." So here the shepherd's rod is giving us an example in 2TG number 6, page 15, that we should not be superficial readers. That if the description in the Bible cannot be exactly fits to the things that it had been applied, it cannot be the particular object in view. So when the Bible says that the children of Israel, Judah and Israel, the 12 tribes, will be a son of the sea, and since the identified Jews of today is but a handful of people, then it cannot be applied to the literal Israel. And that is why here in track number 5, I would like to read again. Track number 5 on page 34, it says, I would like to begin on page 33 and page 34. Though all such prophecies necessarily bring to our attention things which took place centuries ago, yet they are designed, like the revelation, to show to God's people things which must shortly come to pass. Fulfilled prophecies are seen, therefore, to be employed by the scriptures only as groundwork for that part of prophecy which is yet to be fulfilled. And in page 32, it says, track number 5, the statements which must shortly come to pass, Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter, Revelation 4, verse 1, go to say that the revelation is given with the one particular object in view of showing the things lying not behind but ahead of John's time, with reference being made only incidentally to the past, in order to lay the necessary foundation upon which to build the future. And the shepherd's rod plainly told us in 2SR page 191, it says, the door he saw opened is the veil between the holy and the most holy, for there is no other that had been kept close. Therefore the word hereafter in chapter 4 verse 1 means from the time of the vision pointing forward to 1844, 2SR page 191. So the statement, to repeat again, the focal point of the book of Revelation must be from the generation from 1844 onwards, because it is unreasonable for God that He would seal the book from 1844 backward. If the particular object in view is prior to 1844, then it will be injustice to the chosen people of God living in that period of time by which the particular object in view is in their generations, but the books that pertains to their generations, they have no understanding, according to 2SR page 111, that the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, brothers and sisters, those people living prior to the time of the end have no understanding concerning the book. And the Shepherd's Rod plainly told us in 2TG number 7, page 3, that the understanding of the book of Daniel was not given to the people prior to the time of the end. And it says in 2SR 111, the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation were written especially for the generation living at the time of the end, and not so much for the Roman world. They had no understanding of the writings that pertain to the last days, and thus could not have profited by them. 2SR 111. But the fact is, the book of Revelation is more definitely applied in the judgment that pertains to the living. Because the promise was, in 2TG number 12, page 30, it says, the revelation, therefore, is to be more fully understood during the judgment of the living. 2TG number 12, page 30. The revelation, therefore, is to be more fully understood during the judgment of the living. And it is also stated in 2SR page 9. It says, the book of Revelation is said to be a closed book. It says, the book of Revelation is said to be a closed book, full of symbolical mysteries, incomprehensible to human beings. This is true of all prophetic truths. The one who admits this fact of the book of Revelation automatically confesses that he does not understand the Bible, for all the books of Holy Writ meet and end in the Revelation. Therefore, to understand that book is to understand the Bible. And then it says in the next paragraph, the message in this volume was prophetically timed by the parable of the householder who sent laborers into his vineyard, proving to be the 11th hour call, the last, and at the right time. So here the voice of inspiration says that the complete understanding concerning the book of Revelation, by which this book, Shepherd's Rod Volume 2, is especially explaining the book of Revelation. And it is prophetically timed by the great householder that the entire book of Revelation will be fully understood during the judgment of the living. B.T. Hotep himself says that even the book of Daniel, there are still portions which is still closed in their lifetime. Here in 3 Symbolic Code, number 8 to 10, page 8, it says, however, history proves that the prophecies of Daniel, I would like to read again, 3 Symbolic Code, 8 to 10, page 8. However, history proves that the prophecies of Daniel were not all revealed at once, but slowly. The fact that we as yet do not understand the whole book proves that some parts of it are yet closed. 3 Symbolic Code, 8 to 10, page 8. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. The Shepherd's Rod made it so plain that there are still portions in the book of Daniel by which it was not completely revealed by God to B.T. Hotep. For example, Daniel 11 verse 45. He himself testified that concerning that verse, it is not yet fully understood. I would like to read to you the testimony of the prophet here in 2TG. It's easier, brothers and sisters. 2TG, as the Shepherd's Rod says, 2TG 42 on page 27. The only portion of Daniel chapter 11 yet to be fulfilled is this verse, the last of the chapter. And since these prophecies are made to be understood only when they are being fulfilled or after fulfillment, verse 45 is not as clear as we should like to have it. Consequently, concerning the place of his tabernacles and his end, also as to whether another Christian power shall inherit the title King of the North before verse 45 is fulfilled, only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. 2TG 42, page 27. Although that is not our subject, we will deal that subject on the subject, the beast and its image, but only to prove that what B.T. Hotep says is reality. that in their lifetime, there are still portions in the book of Daniel that was not yet understood, which is still closed, brothers and sisters. And that is why B.T. Hotep says in 1 TG, here in 1 TG number 13, 1 TG number 13, page 8, it says, I would like to begin page 7. As Seventh-day Adventists, 1 TG number 13, page 7. As Seventh-day Adventists, we once boasted that we know our Bible, but since this group ceased boasting, it found that it knew very little in comparison to what it knows now. And still, I cannot say that I have a sufficient knowledge of the Bible to carry me clear inside the pearly gates. In fact, I know that I have much more to learn. So this is the testimony of B.T. Hotep. He himself declared that. And still, I cannot say that I have sufficient knowledge of the Bible to carry me clear inside the pearly gates. In fact, I know that I have much more to learn. I remember, brothers and sisters, the statement in 1 TG number 41. The Shepherd's Rod declared in this reading, 1 TG 41, page 25. Present truth that hopefully lightens the rest of the way. I would like to read again. Present truth that hopefully lightens the rest of the way. In 2 TG number 7, page 15, it says, here we see that the wise are those who take extra oil, extra truth that lightens the rest of their way. 2 TG number 7, page 15. Here we see that the wise are those who take extra oil, extra truth that lightens the rest of their way. In White House Recruiter, page 45, it says, if you fail now to store up this extra oil of truth, you will, in a little while, with naked terror, see the need of it. But when this terrifying realization bursts upon you, it will be in utter vain. For by the time you make a move to get the oil and to go the rest of the way, then as sure as you live, the door will swing shut and all your frantic knuckle knocking at it will but quickly being the faithful, rueful answer from within. Verily I say unto you, I know you not. And oh, what measureless, wordless tragedy that will be, brethren. White House Recruiter, page 45 and page 46. Here's an admonition given by the Shepherd's Rod in tract number 15. Let me read to you here in tract number 15, page 35. It says here, tract number 15, page 35. Having now gone through these preliminaries, the student of advancing truth should be ready, understandingly, and to study the revelation of the things which are to prepare the way and enable him wholeheartedly to know that now is the time, or the time is at hand, that a knowledge of the revelation will enable him to stand in the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Tract number 15 on page 34. So that reading is plainly declaring, brothers and sisters, that only the knowledge of the book of Revelation that will enable us to stand in the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Or, in other words, without the knowledge in the book of Revelation, it is not possible to survive the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And it is now high time now, brothers and sisters, to study seriously the book of Revelation. Now, the Shepherd's Rod declared clearly in 2SR, page 221. It says here, we have stated before that the book of Revelation is a revealing of prophecies and not a prophecy of itself. So the book of Revelation is only a revelation of the prophecies recorded in the Old Testament. And that's why the Shepherd's Rod says in 2SR page 9 that to understand that book, which is the book of Revelation, to understand that book is to understand the Bible. Because the Revelation is the book that reveals the prophecies recorded in the Old Testament. Therefore, whatever explanation that we will give in when the prophecies recorded in the Old Testament, it needs to harmonize the explanation in the book of Revelation. Or in other words, the only authoritative explanation of all the prophecies recorded in the Old Testament must be the book of Revelation. And it should be in the light of the shepherd's rod. Because when the shepherd's rod are understood, then the Bible, and not only the Bible, but as well as the scroll of prophecy are understood. Here in Answerer number 5, page 55, the Bible and the books of the Spirit of prophecy being the sole source of the shepherd's rod message. Therefore, when the rod is taught, the Bible and the Spirit of prophecy are taught. So when the shepherd's rod are taught, then the Bible and the Spirit of prophecy are taught. And that is why the admonition, brothers and sisters, that we need to teach only in the light of the shepherd's rod. Answerer number 5, page 56, teach only in the light of the rod. Now, we need now to combine the entire shepherd's rod publications, brothers and sisters. And this subject, the 144,000 spiritual Israel going out of Egypt, is very important subject, brothers and sisters. And that's why I'm trying my best to explain this subject gradually and with too much scale, brothers and sisters, so that the truth concerning about it will stand according to the shepherd's rod in its mountainous finality and grandeur. Now, this subject, brothers and sisters, I would like to connect first on the subject on Zechariah chapter 6, because in that subject, the paradox of the ages is involved the subject concerning Egypt. And I do fully believe that this statement in track number 2, page 45, saying, "O brother, sister, be not fooled. If this does not reach your heart now, in time to save you from the evil to come, it will surely overtake you eventually, but then only to destroy, not to save you. So stay no longer with the grizzled horses in Egypt. For to do so will be only to perish there with them, while the bay take the chariot to the promised land." Now, study carefully, brothers and sisters, this reading. First of all, the evil to come mentioned here, 100%, is the same with the overflowing scourge mentioned in 1SR page 64. Now, let us go back to 1SR page 64. Then, go back to this reading in track number 2, page 45. 1SR page 64. This experience of the Israelites in departing from Egypt was written for the instruction of those who should live in the last days. Before the overflowing scourge shall come upon the dwellers of the earth, the Lord calls upon all who are Israelites indeed to prepare for that event. So this reading in 1SR page 64 is plainly telling us that we need to prepare for that event, brothers and sisters. Before the overflowing scourge will come, we need to depart from Egypt. And that is the evil time mentioned in track number 2. Now let us go back again to track number 2, page 45. It says, "O brother, sister, be not fooled if this does not reach your heart now in time to save you from the evil to come. It will surely overtake you eventually, but then only to destroy, not to save you. So stay no longer with the grizzled horses in Egypt. For to do so will be only to perish there with them, while the bay take the chariot to the promised land." For sure, the evil to come mentioned in that paragraph is also the evil to come in Isaiah 57:1. Or in other words, this verse in Isaiah 57:1, let's read the Bible. Isaiah 57:1, "The righteous perisheth, and no man layeth it to heart. And merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come." Isaiah 57, verse 1. And we know that there are those who died under the faith of the third angel's message since 1844. The generations in the days of Sister White and the generations in the days of Betty Hodder, those righteous that had been laid down to grave, they were saved by God in the evil time to come, then 100% we can immediately discern that the vision that was shown by God to Zechariah on chapter 6, the focal point, the particular object in view is not in the generation of Sister White. It is not in the generation of Betty Hotep, because all of them had been laid down to sleep before the evil time to come. But it is more pertaining to the people living in that period of time, the evil time. When the evil time will come, brothers and sisters, or in other words, we need to know definitely the appointed time when that evil time will come, so that we could be able to escape the overflowing scourge, that evil time, my dear brothers and sisters. I remember B.T. Hotep says in 1TG number 8 on page 21, it says, "What they now see at a distance appears to them for sure to be the sea of glass. But when they get to the end of the way and take a close look, they will in indescribable grief and with quivering voice cry out, 'Mirage, mirage, not the sea of glass.' Then will they be anxious to know the truth and will pay anything to get it, but it will be too late, and they will, to change the figure, get to the door only to hear the voice from within say, 'I know you not.'" That is why the admonition in 1TG number, the admonition given by the Voice of Inspiration, that we need to get on the door on time, and we should not force him. Oh, the admonition is that we should not disappoint our Lord Jesus Christ. I would like to read here in 1TG 25, page 13. "Shall we anoint our eyes with this fresh golden oil of truth, that we may see and know the way, that we may reach the door on time? There is no reason for staying wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. The Lord is waiting at the door of our hearts. He anxious to pour out a blessing, to fill the cup to overflowing. Let us not disappoint him by forcing him to pass us by. Let us now disarm and fearlessly prepare to sit in peace under our God-given fig tree." In tract number 6, I remember that reading in tract number 6, on page 71, it says, "Obvious it is that the opposition is engendered and nurtured by self-appointed leaders who avowedly laying no claim to inspiration, and thereby unwittingly crying out that the Lord has not sent them. Yet neither they nor their adherents perceive either the irony or the folly of their position. Hence, sleeping preachers preaching to a sleeping people." Testimonies for the Church, Volume 2, 337. "When they find themselves face to face with either the overflowing scourge, Isaiah 28 verse 18, or the final visitation of the wrath of God, Revelation 15 verse 1, they will be stabbed with the tragedy of futile realization. That which now from a distance appears to them mirage-like an ocean of grace will then inescapably engulf them in abysmal ruin eternally. Tract number 6, page 71. So, hoping that this should not be our experience, brothers and sisters, because the Shepherd's Rod says that only experience can tell the sorrow. Here in 1SR page 185, it says, "The disappointment to such a one would be greater than we can realize. Experience only can tell the sorrow and grief at such a time." So I would like to read again. It says, "The disappointment to such a one would be greater than we can realize. Experience only can tell the sorrow and grief at such a time." But I would like to go on the positive side, and hoping that this would be our experience here in 2SR page 102, saying, "And no man could learn that song." What is that song? The heavenly truth, right? In 2SR 172, it says, "The song was sung in heaven by heavenly beings before the throne and before the beast and the elders. Therefore, it is evident that the judgment was in progress." The judgment mentioned here is the judgment that pertains to the living. Because because it is concerning Revelation 14. It says here, therefore it is evident that the judgment was in progress. Note that the 144,000 did not sing, but they only could learn the song as it was sung in heaven. That is, they alone understood the heavenly truth in that particular time and their position in connection with the message they must bear. So the song is signifying heavenly truth. And that heavenly truth, that is the present truth. The present truth under the seventh seal, brothers and sisters. And the shepherds had made it so plain in one symbolic code, number 15, page 8, that the comparison is with the dead and not with the living. One symbolic code, number 15, page 8, it will be noted that the shepherd's rod is stating this of the 144,000 in comparison with the dead and not with the great multitude. Meaning, brothers and sisters, that there is a wide contrast, there is a wide distinction, there must be a comparison with those saints that experience death and the saints that will no longer to taste death. What is the comparison? The heavenly truth. That such heavenly truth never been understood. Any of them who experience grave and resurrection. And Bitihonep, brothers and sisters, being one among them who died, then there must be a comparison with us and with Bitihotep. There must be heavenly truth by which that heavenly truth never been bestowed by God to Bitihotep. Otherwise, there would be no comparison at all, brothers and sisters. Now, let us read again in 2SR page 102. It says, and no man could learn that song. Experience only can tell the joy. It says, 2SR page 102. Experience only can tell the joy in one's heart at a time when rescued from everlasting ruin and granted everlasting life without tasting death, merged into eternity's ceaseless ages, a life that measures with the life of God. What a wonderful statement, brothers and sisters. And only experience can tell the joy in one's heart. And that's why in answerer number 1. In answerer number 1, it says, answerer number 1 on page 10, remember, there is a divine law that converts every honest effort into joy. A personal experience with God in eternal life. So I would like to read again. Answerer number 1, page 10. Remember, there is a divine law that converts every honest effort into joy. A personal experience with God and eternal life. And that joy is the same with the joy of that blind man experience. The shepherd's rod declared clearly here in 1 TG number 2 on page 18. Let us now judge our own case. If our vision at this moment is the same as always, then plainly enough his coming has not profited us as yet. If on his visitation we assume that we already see and know enough, have need of nothing more, and cannot be convinced otherwise, then we shall become blind forever. Will never be able to see what he wishes us to see. But if we admit that we are blind to spiritual things, that our eyes need to be open, then Christ will make us see. Such will by experience say, once I was blind, but now I see. The blind man's experience must be ours. Brethren, in 1 TG 32, page 17, the shepherd's rod says that spiritual blindness is really a cruel thing. Here in 1 TG number 32, page 17, spiritual blindness is a cruel thing. It is a cruel thing. Its victims can hardly be made to see either their sins or the righteousness of God. They misinterpret and misapply everything that is intended for their own good. The message that we are proclaiming to all those who are listening, if they will only listen carefully and honestly and sincerely, it is intended for your own good. But spiritual blindness, cruel thing, because they will misinterpret everything and anything by which in reality it is intended for their own good. And that's why in White House Recruiter, page 27, it says here, this is the statement given by the Voice of Inspiration. The prophecies we all know are heaven's light to our feet if we fail to open our eyes and hearts to them, at the time the Lord would have us profit by the unrolling of the scroll, how then shall we escape being like the blind, leading the blind? White House Recruiter, page 27. The prophecies we all know are heaven's light to our feet. If we fail to open our eyes and hearts to them, at the time the Lord would have us profit by the unrolling of the scroll, how then shall we escape being like the blind, leading the blind? The prophecies are our roadmap to the kingdom, brothers and sisters, right? In one symbolic code, number 6, page 10, it says, God has never yet revealed the whole truth to any one person, but He expects us to keep pace with the ever-increasing light. And though its advancing truth at first dawning seemed more or less hazy as to its real essence and magnitudes, we shall see it more and more in its true character the nearer we come to it. For the prophecies of the Bible stand as a roadmap to the kingdom. You know the grammar saying, God has never yet revealed the whole truth to any one person, brothers and sisters, according to the shepherd's rod, showing that there is an appointed time that God would reveal the whole truth to one person. So the statement saying, God has never yet revealed the whole truth to any one person, showing that in the days of Beti-Hotep, the promise was not yet fulfilled that God will give the whole truth to one person. But in His days, God did not as yet. And I would like to read that statement in 2TG number 18, page 22. It says, the praise as yet implies that after the 1 hour, they will receive their kingdom. So the praise as yet, meaning there is an appointed time. And that is the promise in Matthew 24, verse 47, that God will make him ruler over all his goods, meaning God will bestow unto him all the present truths, the entire plan of redemption, right? And here in 2SR page 179, let me read to you that statement. It says, who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household to give them to the world meat in due season? Verse 45. Note that there is a question as to whom this faithful servant could be. There is a question, and 100% the answer is found in 11 symbolic code number 3, page 6. It says, this is speaking of him who faithfully gives meat in due season. The goods is present truth. We are told in Malachi that before the great and terrible day of the Lord, Elijah is to come. Then when Elijah appears, his message will be present truth. So it points out to the antitypical Elijah that is by the last of the prophets, brothers and sisters. And that is the fulfillment of the promise according to 11 symbolic code number 12, page 7, verse 47. Verily I say unto you that he will make him ruler over all his goods. 11 symbolic code number 12, page 7. This verse implies that God has not as yet made his servant ruler over all his goods. We already read that the praise as yet, pointing that there is an appointed time. But in the days of Beti-Hotep, that promise did not as yet materialize, brothers and sisters. Because if you will say that Beti-Hotep is the last prophet, Beti-Hotep is the last inspired servant, then Beti-Hotep died in 1955. Are we saying that God did not fulfill what He promised? That when the last servant, the last prophet will come, God will bestow unto him all his goods, and the goods is present food. There are many things that have not been given by God to Beti-Hotep, and it is most especially the present truth under the seventh seal. Why? Because the present truth under the seventh seal in 2SR 202, it is concerned the living. And we already read in 2SR 172 that there is a heavenly truth that only the 144,000 could learn that heavenly truth. And the comparison is with the dead. One symbolic code number 15, page 8. So that what it means, brothers and sisters, that there is a present truth that had not been bestowed by God to Beti-Hotep. But to repeat again, we fully believe that the Shepherd's Rod publications are complete, sufficient. Whatever the present truth that God will give to the saints that will no longer to taste death, it is already written in the Shepherd's Rod. And the divine principle is the same. In the Great Controversy 344, that even the prophets who have been favored with a special illumination of the Spirit did not fully comprehend the true import of the meaning of those things that they had written. Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, John the Beloved, the writer of the book of Revelation, brothers and sisters, that divine principle must be applied to all of them. This statement in 2TG number 44 on page, let me see, 2TG number 44, I think it is page 31. Page 31, and though John wrote them, he himself could not before time explain them. Then how can we do such before time and without the inspiration of the same Spirit who indicted them? 2TG 44, page 31. This reading can be applied to Daniel, to Ezekiel, to Isaiah, as well as to Sister White, as well as to B.T. Hotep. I would like to paraphrase the statement. And though B.T. Hotep wrote them, the Shepherd's Rod publications, he himself could not before time explain them, explain the present truth under the seventh seal. Although it is already in the Shepherd's Rod publications, but B.T. Hotep could not explain it before time, because that message is intended to the living saints. And that is why we fully believe that the message of present truth under the seventh seal will come within the message of the Shepherd's Rod publications. I would like to read this reading in Answerer number 1, page 49. And the light may come solely from within the message itself. So I would like to read the statement. And the light may come solely from within the message itself. So the light of present truth under the seventh seal will come solely within the Shepherd's Rod publication itself. Now let us go back to our subject, Zechariah chapter 6. Or we call it the paradox of the ages. And I would like to repeat again and again. Let us look at the chart in Zechariah chapter 6 and ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. Zechariah 6, verse 1 to 8. The church to, or in other words, the church to the wilderness, and then back from the wilderness. Here, prophetic history by unmistakable symbols. For sure, the pronoun here is pointing to the woman. Therefore, our subject concerning the 144,000 going out of Egypt must also be connected to the subject, the woman, in Revelation chapter 12. Now, let us focus first to the subject concerning the paradox of the ages. I would like to read this statement in the Old Symbolic Code. At 3 Symbolic Code, number 7, page 3. It says, this symbolism shows that governments are symbolized by horns, not heads, and that when they are successive, the symbolism does not fail to reveal so. So I would like only to focus to that statement that the symbolism does not fail to reveal so. The same with the statement in 1 SR 124.9. The picture tells the story. Symbols do not lie. 1 SR page 124. It says here, the picture tells the story. Symbols do not lie. 1 SR page 124. Now let us focus now to the picture and the symbols in Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 to verse 8. Now I would like to begin in track number 2. Let's read track number 2 on page 12. It says, never has this symbolical prophecy been understood by any people, and never could it have been fulfilled and not been revealed. For then would its truth have been unavailable to the people in the past, and but half efficacious to us now. Necessarily, then, its fulfillment is yet future, sometime in the latter part of the Christian era. Track number 2, page 12. Let us analyze the statement. First, the statement saying unavailable to the people in the past. That is, I would like to point out that that would be from 1930 backward. Although the book of Zechariah were already written thousands of years during the Old Testament period, but the Christians had no understanding concerning about it. And the very first one by which such vision of Zechariah had been unfolded, it was in the days of Beth-Hotep. And I do fully believe that the statement here, but half efficacious to us now, is pointing to the generation in the days of Beth-Hotep. Why is it that it is half efficacious to them? Because in reality, they are not the particular object in view. The particular object in view is to the latter part of the Christian era. And I do fully believe that the latter part of the Christian era, the last section in the Christian dispensation, is the last generation, the generation by which God designs them to be translated to heaven without seeing death. Now, let us now analyze closely, brothers and sisters, this wonderful prophecy in Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 to verse 8. Now, I would like to emphasize that the shepherd's rod made it so plain that whatever the particular object in view in the vision of Zechariah chapter 6, it says it could never been fulfilled and not been revealed. Track number 2, page 12. Or in other words, it is illogical and unreasonable on the part of God if He permitted and commanded His servant to write this vision in Zechariah chapter 6, verse 1 to 8. And then the particular object in view of the fulfillment of such prophecy had been fulfilled, but no one understood. Now, I fully believe that Beth-Hotep with his associates from 1930 to 1955, 100% they have understanding concerning Zechariah chapter 6, verse 1 to 8. But they were already dead. And this prophecy will be fulfilled, brothers and sisters, before they will be resurrected. Or in other words, Zechariah chapter 6 verse 1 to 8, the final and perfect fulfillment of such vision will be fulfilled in a time when Beth-Hotep, together with his associates, are still lying unconscious in their graves. Or in other words, I would like to emphasize, brothers and sisters, that God knoweth beforehand that Beth-Hotep would die, and also with his associates. And 100% there must be a particular object in view in the vision of Zechariah chapter 6 verses 1 to 8, by which that particular object in view had not been revealed by God to Beth-Hotep, but it was written by Beth-Hotep. Or in other words, the full understanding concerning Zechariah chapter 6 verse 1 to 8 in reality was not given by God to Beth-Hotep, although it was written by Beth-Hotep. Now, I would like to read track number 2, page 37. It says, obviously, therefore, this strange circumstance must hold a singular present truth lesson of great importance to the Church of God at the present hour, when the vision has been opened and the truth unfolded, the time in which the Church is confronted with a strange and perplexing problem which human wisdom is at a loss to solve. Now, I think 100% in reality, the present hour mentioned here is the generation in which we are living. That is why I would like to read again that statement in 2SR 256, that it is really remarkable. Here in 2SR page 256, it says, it is remarkable to note the perfect grammatical order of the words at the time of their application, clearly dividing the word of truth as though it were written just at the time the prophetic words are revealed. So, it seems that those passages that we are reading are just written at the time the prophetic words are revealed. And that present hour, brothers and sisters, cannot be the present hour in the days of Beth-Hotep, because it was already yesterday. The present hour in the days of Beth-Hotep could not be the present hour in our days. In 1TG number 43, page 23, it says, but exhort one another daily, while it is called today, not yesterday, not the day of Miller or of White. Logically, Beth-Hotep will not include his day, because that is the present time. But logically, the days of Beth-Hotep is already a part of yesterday in our days. That's why we could paraphrase the statement by saying, but exhort one another daily, while it is called today, not yesterday, not the day of Miller or of White or of Beth-Hotep. So the word today in our days could not be the today in the days of Beth-Hotep. Now, the shepherd's rod plainly told us, brothers and sisters, that God is a perfect God, right? In 1 SR 232. And that is why B.T. Hotep says 100% true. It did not say 99%, but 100%. I would like to read 1 SR 232. It says, as God is infallible, all His works spell perfection, even to one jot or one title. The statement being true, He should have provided a way whereby we may check up and ascertain His truth. This chart, page 224, being the summary of the message this publication bears, it says, should be able to tell whether it proves correct or not. If it contents prove 100% true, we must accept it as God's truth. By all Bible students, Numbers 3 and 7 are accepted to be the biblical numbers to ascertain scriptural truths. 1 SR 232. So since our God is a God, a perfect God, an infallible God, all His works spell perfection. And we need to ascertain clearly that if the message, the contents of the message are 100% true. Now, if you fully believe that the Shepherd's Rod publications are 100% true, then if the message that we proclaim are only the messages that are written in the Shepherd's Rod publications, then this message must be 100% true. Now, let us now read 2TG number 22, page 19. It says, the paradox in this prophetic symbolism is with the fourth chariot. I would like to read again. The paradox in this prophetic symbolism is with the fourth chariot. So, there is no paradox in the first chariot. There is no paradox in the second chariot. There is no paradox on the third chariot. But the paradox is only with the fourth chariot. 2TG 22, page 19. What is a paradox? According to the dictionary, it defines the paradox. It is a statement that it seems contradictory. It seems that there is a discrepancy, but that is the absolute fact. There is an absolute fact, brothers and sisters. Now, let us read the statement in track number 2, page 42. It says here, thus, in their perfect mutual harmony, the Bible and the spirit of prophecy once again exalt each other and clear the paradox of the fourth chariot. Its double span of horses, each of which, as revealed by their colors and aims, is inimical in character, principle, and objective. Each contesting the right to the chariot, endeavoring to keep it in the south country, Egypt, where they are blindly settled on their lease. The grizzled, the leadership at the very head of the chariot, say in their hearts, the Lord will not do good, neither will He do evil. Therefore, their goods shall become a booty, and their houses a desolation. Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 12 and 13. Whereas the bay, the leadership behind the grizzled, seek to go to and fro through the earth. We know that that statement, settled on their lease, is found in the book of Zephaniah. Let us read 1TG. 1TG number 21, page 21. At the time, labor and capital are in a clash, and it is more pointing to the situation in the United States of America. At the time, labor and capital, or the capitalists, are in a clash, then it is that Jerusalem, the church, shall be searched, as it were, with candles. Consequently, the men who have settled in their houses, those who act as though the Lord has forsaken the earth, shall have their punishment. What does it mean by settled in their houses? It is inscribed in plural form, houses, meaning denominations. Of course, if you are settled, you are contented. You feel at ease because you are settled, according to that reading. And here in answerer number 1, page 14 and 15, it says, when one finds himself in a climate, answerer number 1, page 14, when one finds himself in a climate which is neither cold nor hot, but lukewarm, a temperature desired and sought by all, there he basks as a pauper, become a prince. So it is with the Laodiceans, as represented in prophecy, though their supposed riches are nothing but a debt trap. And here in page 15, in protesting that they are not wretched, not unhappy, not miserable, not troubled, not poor, not in need of truth, not blind, not benighted or illiterate, not naked, not without the righteousness of Christ, the Laodiceans are contradicting the true witness, rejecting his counsel and discrediting him, his remedy, the eye salve. Answerer number 1, page 14 and 15. Now, let us study closely, brothers and sisters, this wonderful prophecy. Who are they, the grizzled horses in our days? Thus, the grizzled horses is pointing to the leadership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Or in other words, are all the Begians today are bay horses? And secondly, is there any prediction that the bay horses are quarreling and bickering each other, hostile against each other's faith? That is the condition today among the media, brothers and sisters. And ponder deeply, is there any possibility that there are grizzled horses? Horses represent leadership. Is there any possibility that there are leadership among the media represented by the grizzled horses? Now we need to study deeper. Zechariah chapter 6. Now, I would like to prove to you, brothers and sisters, first in the chart, and then we will read all the evidences in the Shepherd's Rod publications. Now, look at the chart in Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 to 8. Why is it that the leadership on the first chariot, on the second chariot, and the third chariot, there are two horses, brothers and sisters? What does horses represent? Now, as I've said, historically, I would like to prove to you. Now, let us look at Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 to 8. Now, the first chariot is led by two red horses, and the second chariot is also led by two black horses, and then the third chariot is led by two white horses. What is the significance? Why is it that God places two horses on the first, second, and third chariot, and also the fourth chariot? The only difference is that the fourth chariot, there are two pair of horses, two grizzled horses and two bay horses. But the absolute fact is that there are always two horses. There must be an absolute significance in that illustration in Zechariah chapter 6, verse 1 to 8. Now, for sure, the significance is that, for example, the first chariot, I fully believe that all of us will agree, brothers and sisters, that the first chariot must be pointing to the early Christian church. Why? Because the voice of inspiration, I would like to read here in track number 2, that these four chariots must be churches in the Christian era, because the two mountains are made of brass. Now, let's read again. Track number 2, page 13. It says, so being of brass, the mountains denote that the church which they symbolize is in period number 3. In the fact that there is a third period presupposes two preceding periods, making in all 3 great divisions of time. The first from creation to the flood, then second from the flood to the crucifixion of Christ, and the third from the crucifixion to his second coming. The Christian era is therefore the one to which the symbolical mountains of brass apply. And then it says, necessarily then, the former of the two mountains is symbolical of the spirit-filled early Christian church prior to 538 AD, and the latter of the Christian church sometime after 1798 AD, when it is, as was the early Christian church, fitted for God's holy dwelling place as described in the following scriptures. O thou afflicted thus with the tempest and not comforted, behold, I will make thy windows of gates and thy gates of carbuncles, and all thy children shall be thought of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of thy children. Isaiah 54, verse 11 to verse 13. Now, here the Shepherd's Rod says, let's read track number 2, page 26. It says, the first chariot. The consecutive order of the chariots indicates a series of gospel events. In the first chariot were red horses. That the color red stands for bloodshed. The spirit of prophecy burst out as we were traveling along. We meet a company. I noticed red as a border on their garments. I asked Jesus who they were. He said there were martyrs that had been slain for him. Early Writings, pages 18 and 19. The red border on the garments of this company being emblematic of martyrdom. Obviously, then the red color of the horses denotes the martyred leaders of the church before 538 AD. So it says, before 538 AD. And then it says, in response to Zechariah's question as to who the horses were and where they were going, the angel answered, the black horses which are therein go forth into the north country, and the white go forth after them, and the grizzled go forth toward the south country. And the bay went forth and sought to go that they might walk to and fro through the earth. Zechariah 6, verse 6 and 7. Though the angel's answer discloses the respective directions toward which the black, white, grizzled, and bay horses went, it omits to make the slightest mention of the red horses, thus riveting the conclusion that the red horses were martyred and went nowhere so far as their final destination is concerned. Now, let us study closely now, brothers and sisters. First, the red horses. The question is that, does the black horses are not martyred? They were martyred also, because the black horses is representing the reformers during the dark ages of religion, right? It says here, this being clear, our next step logically is to identify the second chariot. And in the second chariot were black horses. Universally, the figurative significance of black is bondage. So as the martyrdom of the early Christian church was followed by the dark ages of religion from 538 AD to 1798 AD, it is very evident that the chariot with the black horses represents the church and its leadership during this long prophetic period in the ecclesiastical Roman bondage. This fact is borne out by the angel's explanation of the horses' destination. The black horses, he said, go forth into the north country, and the north country is the biblical term for ancient Babylon, as is quickly seen from the following scriptures. Saith the Lord God, I will bring Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, from the north. Ezekiel 26 verse 7. Again, when the Jews were returning from Babylon to Jerusalem, God spoke through his prophet Zechariah, saying, Who, come forth and flee from the land of the north. Zechariah 2 verse 6. Thus identifying Babylon as the north country. But as we are dealing with the fulfillment of prophecy in the New Testament era, the north country in this connection must be antitypical Babylon, Christianized Rome, where God's people during the New Testament period have gone. Now, I would like to ask the question again to all Shepherd's Rod believers. We fully believe that the black horses must be the reformers, brothers and sisters. They are the reformers during the dark ages of religion, 538 to 1798, and I think it is more pertaining to the four great denominations. Now, these are the questions. Does the reformers had not been martyred during the dark ages? They were martyred. But why is it that the color that was given to them, instead of red, it is black? There must be an accurate significance, brothers and sisters, that even though the reformers were martyred during the dark ages, the focal point is not their martyrdom, but the focal point is how they make a protest to the papacy. The statement they go toward the north country is that they had been commanded by God to go to the north country, which is the papacy, to make a protest against the papacy. Now, I would like to emphasize clearly, brothers and sisters. First, according to 2TG number 22, it says here, and also in track number 2, 2TG 22, page 19. Let's read the statement. The prophet Zechariah was as anxious to know as we are, for he asked, What are these, my Lord? And hoping that at this present time, our eagerness, if possible, will exceed the eagerness of Zechariah. We need to know everything concerning the vision in Zechariah chapter 6, verse 1 to 8. Now let's read again the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod in 2TG number 22 on page 19. It says, The prophet Zechariah was as anxious to know as we are, for he asked, What are these, my Lord? We can also ask to our Almighty God at this present time. We want to know, Lord, what are the particular object in view? We can pray by saying, we know that you give vision to Zechariah and you give understanding to Bethihotep in his days. But all of them were already dead. And we fully understand, Lord, that we are the particular object in view. And for sure, there must be a singular present truth lesson according to track number 2, page 37. There must be a singular present truth lesson. That statement, singular present truth lesson, is the same in track number 5, page 32. Particular object in view. Please open our eyes, Lord, our understanding, that we could be able to grasp that particular object in view. That singular present truth lesson in this wonderful subject in Zechariah chapter 6, verse 1 to 8, as explained by the shepherd's rod. Now, let us read 2TG number 22, page 19. It says, the prophet Zechariah was as anxious to know as we are, for he asked, what are these, my Lord? And to his question came the answer, these are the 4 spirits of the heavens which go forth from standing before the Lord of the whole earth. The angel's answer is positive. So it is very positive. The chariots, he declared, are the spirits of the heavens who stand before the Lord and who are sent to go to and through the earth. Plainly then, these 4 themes and chariots symbolize 4 messages, 4 spirits sent from God's presence. And since all the messages from God are carried to and through the earth by the ministry and the church, the chariots and their teams therefore are seen to symbolize the church at work in 4 different periods. 2TG 22, page 19. In this reading, my dear brothers and sisters, since these 4 chariots represents 4 spirits coming from the presence of God, then 100% I would like to immediately declare, let us distinctly separate those leadership, those chariot that displeases the Spirit of God, and those 4 teams and those 4 spirits by which the mere fact that it comes from the presence of God, they did not displease the Spirit and the will of God. Now, let us continue on this very important subject, brothers and sisters. We are now interested to know, first of all, why is it that God, when He showed the vision to Zechariah, He places 2 horses on each chariot? What is the absolute significance? And secondly, why is it that in spite of the fact that the people of God, of the early Christian church had been martyred, but also the people of God during the Dark Ages had been martyred, why is it that only to the first chariot, the red horses, by which God emphasized clearly the color red to the first chariot, and then God gave the color black to the second chariot, in spite of the fact that they were also martyred for their faith? There must be an accurate significance. And that is why in 2SR, page 194, I would like to emphasize that reading. 2SR, page 194, it says, unless the meaning of every symbol is fittingly explained so that it cannot be contradicted, and a present truth lesson with special significance derived, the interpretation cannot be dependable and there can be no truth in it. God does not make vain repetitions, neither would He waste the time of His servants to write them. Therefore, every little symbol has its meaning and reveals a great truth. Every little symbol, there must be a great meaning, brothers and sisters, and reveals great truth. 2SR, page 194. Now, I would like to read first Revelation chapter 6 on verse 9, 10, and 11. It says, and when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them. And it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren should be killed as they were, should be fulfilled. Revelation 6, verse 9, verse 10, and 11. There are three entities mentioned in these three verses. First, the souls under the altar. Second, the fellow servants. Third, the fellow brethren. Who are they, brothers and sisters? And what does the altar represent? I think that is in track number 5. If you could locate that statement, that altar represent reformation, brothers and sisters. That is one of the significance of the altar, as stated by the shepherd's rod. Altar represent reformation. And then I would like to read another statement. You find it, that statement, in the shepherd's rod publications. Now let us read 2SR, brothers and sisters. Now, these three entities recorded in Revelation 6, verse 9, verse 10, and 11 are the three martyrdoms in the three periods of the exceeding great horn. They are represented by the three martyrdoms in the three periods of the exceeding great horn. I would like to read first track number 3, page 39. It says here, the treading of the host is the massacring of the Christians who would not worship according to the dictates of the horn power. I would like to read again the statement. Track number 3, page 39. The treading of the host is the massacring of the Christians who would not worship according to the dictates of the horn power. Now, the horn power mentioned is the exceeding great horn, divided into three divisions. And it says, still track number 3, page 39. And as the great horn of the he-goat is symbolical of the Roman world in its three periods, pagan, ecclesiastical, and Protestant. So the exceeding great horn are divided into three divisions: pagan Rome, ecclesiastical Rome, and the Protestant period. Now, the Protestant period, brothers and sisters, the shepherd's rod declared clearly, that is the period that followed after the dark ages of religion. Here in 2TG number 22, page 21 and 22, this symbolical prophecy is seen to corroborate history. It points out that the Christian church at first suffered martyrdom, shown by the color red. Then followed the dark ages of religion, when the church was in captivity, black. Following this came the Protestant period, the period of religious freedom, white theme. 2TG 22, pages 21 and page 22. Therefore, the Protestant period must be from 1799 onwards. And the shepherd's rod made it so plain that here in 2SR page 151, I would like to read, we quote, this power is the last that treads down the true church of God. We already read, brothers and sisters, in track number 3, page 39, that the treading of the host is the massacring of the Christian. Now, the shepherd's rod plainly told us that the power, that power that treads down the true church of God, did not as yet ended. Or in other words, the last period must be in the Protestant period, when the Christians will be martyred for their faith. So, Revelation 6 verse 9, brothers and sisters, 10 and 11, the souls under the altar, they must be the martyr during the first period of the exceeding great horn, pagan Rome. And then the fellow servants, they are the martyrs during the dark ages of religion, the reformers. And then the fellow brethren, brothers and sisters, that is, those who will be martyred for their faith, brothers and sisters, when this horn power is at work against God and against His truth and against His people. Track number 3, page 25. And that is the fulfillment of the vision of the prophet in, let us read again, in 3SM, brothers and sisters. Here in 3SM page 398, let us read the production given by the prophet. Selected messages, 3SM, page 300. Let us read, brothers and sisters, 398. It says, preparation in the battle before the last closing conflict. The two armies will stand distinct and separate. This distinction will be so marked that many who shall be convinced of the truth will come on the side of God's commandment-keeping people. When this grand work is to take place in the battle prior to the last closing conflict, many will be imprisoned. Many will be, it says, many will flee for their lives from cities and towns, and many will be martyrs. So there are many will be martyrs for Christ's sake in standing in defense of the truth. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. The spirit prophecy is predicting the future, that there will be many who will be martyred for their faith, brothers and sisters. And that is the last period of the exceeding great horn, when it will be at work again in the period of the Protestant period. Now let us go back again, brothers and sisters, because we are very interested that why is it that in Zechariah chapter 6 verses 1 to 8, it is only the first chariot that God placed the color red to indicate martyrdom, brothers and sisters. Now, if that is the focal point, why is it that God did not place color red to the second chariot, while in reality, they were also martyred for their faith? And not only they, also the fellow brethren, they will also be martyred for their faith. So there must be truth that had been hidden beneath the surface, more than to indicate that they were martyred for their faith. Now, I would like to read first 2 TG, number 22, on page 22. Since the church originated in Asia, Jerusalem in particular, the first chariot is seen to have to remain there, for it went nowhere. The north country, geographically north of Palestine, is where the other chariots went. That is, the countries which the Christian nations are now inhabiting. The fourth chariot, though, is supposed to go to and through the earth, to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. But contrary to this, the gray soul go forth toward the south country, which, figuratively speaking, would be spiritual Egypt, worldliness. Now, I would like to focus first to the first chariot. The shepherd's rod plainly explaining here that the significance why God did not place the destination of the first chariot is to let us know that the leadership, they did not departed from Jerusalem. They remained there. Now, brothers and sisters, since the first chariot is represented by the early Christian church, and the entire period of the early Christian church is from 27 AD up to 538 AD. Or in other words, our understanding in Zechariah chapter 6 must be in perfect harmony with the subject, the temple's type. Now, the early Christian church, the entire period of the early Christian church must be from 27 AD up to 538 AD. I would like to read that reading in 2SR page 268. It says, therefore, these two temples are types of two sections of the Christian church, with the antitypical sanctuary service made up of these two laws, moral and ceremonial. The first section of the Christian church, from the crucifixion, now here it starts from 31 AD, from the crucifixion to about 538 AD, was endowed with just such a sanctuary. That is, they had a perfect knowledge of the work in the heavenly to that time, and their faith corresponded with its service. Now, the entire period of the early Christian church was from crucifixion to 538 AD. Now, brothers and sisters, in the temple's type, we know that in that period of time, from 31 AD to 538 AD, there are two candlesticks. The second candlesticks in Revelation 11:3, which is the apostolic church, and the first candlestick in Revelation chapter 2 or Revelation chapter 1. Now, let us read 2SR 284. It says, thus we have a candlestick for each of the two sections of God's church, while the scriptures were being written. One candlestick and one olive tree to the Jewish church, and one candlestick and one olive tree to the apostles or apostolic church, and 7 for the remaining history of the church to the time of the separation of the tares from the wheat, or to the commencement of the harvest. Now, that reading can be easily understood that the second candlestick in Revelation 11 verse 3 is the Apostolic Church. Now, the entire period of the Apostolic Church, let us put from 31 AD to 100 AD. And from 100 AD to 538 AD, that is the period of the first candlestick in Revelation chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3, the Ephesus. Now, in Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 to 8, the same with the subject, the temple's type. These two candlesticks, the second candlestick in Revelation 11:3, which is the Apostolic Church, and the first candlestick in Revelation chapter 1, 2, and 3, which is the Ephesus, is bind together as one. It is called the early Christian church. Therefore, the early Christian church is divided into two sections. The first section is the Apostolic Church. The second section is the Church of the Ephesus. Both of them are called the early Christian church. Now, let us go back again to our main subject, Zechariah chapter 6. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, the significance, why is it that God did not place destination or specific place by which the first chariot went? Unlike with the second, it went to the north country, the third also north country, and the fourth chariot, south country. But the first chariot, there is no description where that chariot went. And that is why, brothers and sisters, the focal point of the first chariot in reality is not pointing to his color, which is color red, which is martyrdom. Because if that is the focal point, then it necessarily God will place color red to the second chariot, because the second chariot is represented by the reformers during the Dark Ages, and they were also martyred for their faith. Therefore, brothers and sisters, the focal point in Zechariah chapter 6 verses 1 to 8 is not the color, but the destination. That is the focal point in Zechariah chapter 6 verses 1 to 8. Now, why is it that God did not place any destination of the first chariot that had been led by the red horses? The first significance is that the first section of the first chariot, which is the early Christian church, they did not left Jerusalem. All of them died in Jerusalem. All the apostles, they did not left Jerusalem. And that is according to 2 TG 22, page 22. But how about the second section of the early Christian church? From 100 AD to 538 AD. The significance is that, brothers and sisters, they are the people represented by the woman that left the vineyard. And there is no place that had been recorded in the Bible where the woman was hidden by Jesus Christ. It was miraculously hidden by Jesus Christ, and the illustration is that she was out of civilization. Now, let us read again the statement, brothers and sisters, in 2SR page 261. So, it says here, the wilderness represents the dark ages in which time she was out of civilization. So at that time, the woman is out of civilization, brothers and sisters. And also in 2SR page 76, at that time, the woman, the second period, she was out of civilization. What does it mean? We already read in track number 12, in page 43. It says here, so had he not nourished her, keep her in existence, by a miracle, the church would have perished during those dark ages of religion. So I would like to read again. Track number 12, page 43. It says, so had he not nourished her, keep her in existence, by a miracle, the church would have perished during the dark ages of religion. Track number 12, page 43 and page 44. Now, since we are also studying the Assyrian Confederacy, I would like to connect so that we could understand this very important prophecy, brothers and sisters. In the Assyrian Confederacy, in the book of Isaiah, we know that. I would like to read Isaiah chapter 7. It says, verse 1, and it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Israel, that Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, went up toward Jerusalem to war against it, but could not prevail against it. We know that Beethoven says that if you will look at the subject in Isaiah chapter 7, there is a time discrepancy. Now let us read track number 14 on page 33. But the simple historical fact that these two kingdoms were overthrown centuries before Emmanuel was even born brings a time discrepancy which can be reconciled only by the conclusion that all four nations, Judah, Israel, Syria, and Assyria, involved in this historical action were typical of four others that were to arise sometime following Emmanuel's birth. For after his birth, Israel and Syria were to be conquered by Assyria. Necessarily then, there must be found in the Christian dispensation a backslidden Christian power, represented by Israel, confederated with a pagan one, Syria, to the end of assimilating or annihilating the Orthodox Christians, Judah. And the only such confederacy in the Christian era was the unholy union of church and state, which ruled during the Dark Ages and which saw to the destruction of the born-again who refused to depart from the apostolic faith and submit to a Christian pagan Israel-Syrian confederacy. Track number 14, page 33 and page 34. Now here the shepherd's rod made it so plain that that historical event by which Israel and Syria confederated together to attack his own brother, which is the kingdom of Judah, find its parallel during the Dark Ages of religion, according to that reading. Now, what is the significance of Isaiah 7 verse 1 saying, they could not prevail against it? That is only pointing to the occurrence during the Dark Ages of religion. That Judah, in that instance, is represented by the woman. And during the Dark Ages of religion, according to track number 15, it says, I would like to read track number 15, page 85 and page 86. Unquestionably, therefore, the wilderness, where the woman was nourished for the time being, is the land of the Gentiles, and the woman's having to flee from the face of the serpent in her homeland shows that the dragon had made the Holy Land his headquarters. Not satisfied with this, though he even followed her into the wilderness. The dragon followed the woman into the wilderness, but the dragon could not found out the location of the woman. That's what it means, that he could not prevail against it, meaning he could not find the location of the woman, because the woman was hidden by God during the Dark Ages. Although, since the shepherd's rod declared clearly, brothers and sisters, here in 2SR page 266, and also in 271, it says, the question before us is, when will the antitype meet its perfect fulfillment? In the preceding paragraphs, it was explained that the first section of the Christian church ended in 538 AD, 266, brothers and sisters. Now, brothers and sisters, I would like to connect that study to the subject of the woman. The shepherd's rod already declared that in 538 AD, the temple was destroyed. Let us read 2SR page 271. 2SR page 271, it says, as type destroyed type, so antitype must have destroyed antitype. That is ancient Babylon, the type of the papacy, robbed and destroyed Solomon's temple, the type of the early Christian church, and led Israel into captivity. This symbolical prophecy meets its perfect fulfillment in 538 AD, when the papacy went forth and destroyed the church Christian, robbed them of the truth, and led the followers of Christ into captivity subject to papal rule. 2SR 271. But since the woman and the temple, I would like to read 2SR 267. It says, the temples and the woman, 2SR 267, the temples and the woman represents the church as a body, or in other words, the symbol of the woman is a revelation of the types, which is the temples, and the temples are symbolical prophecies of the woman, which is the church. church. 2SR page 267. Now, first of all, brothers and sisters, not all candlesticks are called temple or called woman. That is very plain in 2SR 268. We already read in 2SR 284 that there are 10 candlesticks in that paragraph. There are 10 candlesticks. The last paragraph in 2SR 284. There are 10 candlesticks. But the fact is, among the 10 candlesticks, 5 only are called woman. And 5 of them are not called woman or are not called temple. And I would like to enumerate the candlesticks which is called woman. The Jewish church, that is called woman. The first candlestick in Revelation 11, verse 3. The second candlestick is called woman, the apostolic church. The second candlestick in the first candlestick in Revelation, the apostolic church, the second candlestick in Revelation 11, verse 3. I would like to repeat again. The first candlestick in Revelation 11, verse 3 is the Jewish church. It is called woman. And the second candlestick in Revelation 11, verse 3, the apostolic church, it is also called woman. And then the first candlestick in Revelation chapter 2, the Ephesus, is called woman. But the candlesticks represented by Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, and Philadelphia, which is Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist, and the Millerites or the First-day Adventists, these 5 candlesticks never been called as woman because they have no knowledge concerning the daily and the sanctuary. Or in other words, in the daily, which is pointing to the Sabbath, all of them are Sunday keepers. They cannot be called as woman. Therefore, the remaining candlesticks, which is the golden candlesticks, the last candlestick in Revelation 3, which is the Laodiceans, or the Seventh-day Adventist church, that is called woman, the fourth, and then the golden candlestick in Zechariah chapter 4. So half of them are called woman, and half of them are not called woman. So it is very plain in the Shepherd's Rod publications in 2SR page 268. Now let us go back again, brothers and sisters, to our subject. It is very important to connect this subject concerning the woman in Revelation chapter 12. Now, the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain that the temples, I would like to read again. It says, the temples and the woman represents the church as a body. Or in other words, the symbol of the woman is a revelation of the types, which is the temples. And the temples are symbolical prophecies of the woman, the church. Now, since the Shepherd's Rod declared clearly in 2SR 271 that the first literal typical temple, which is the Temple of Solomon, which was destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar in 588 BC, typifying the first antitypical spiritual temple that was destroyed by the papacy in 538 AD. Which is the early Christian church, but the second section of the early Christian church, which is the Ephesus. The church by which B.T. Hotep says became Catholic later. Here in one symbolic code, let us read the statement. In one symbolic code, number 3, page 5, it says, notwithstanding the example which God made of the Jewish leaders, the successors to the apostles as the successors to Moses, by adopting worldly customs and rejecting Luther's message, they also betrayed their sacred trust. Hence, the case of the kingdom of heaven were taken away from the early Christian church, which Catholic later. So that church, the mere fact that it became Catholics, meaning it was completely defeated by the devil. And it says that it was in 538 AD that temple had been destroyed, typifying the Temple of Solomon that was destroyed in 588 BC. Now, brothers and sisters, in the subject of the woman, indicates clearly that in 538 AD, the woman which represented by the Ephesus died. Brothers and sisters, she died while giving birth to the woman which is hidden by Jesus Christ during the 1,260 years. The reason that Jesus Christ hidden the woman during that dark ages of religion because the woman was still in her infancy and she cannot be able to withstand the enemy. And for sure, that symbolization can be found to Rachel because Rachel died giving birth to Benjamin. Now, I would like to read 1 TG, number 48 on page 24, because it is concerning Jeremiah 31, verse 15 and 16. Now, I would like to read 1 TG 48, 24 and 25. These verses, I am sure, need no interpretation or elucidation. verses 15, 16. Thus saith the Lord, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children, because they were not. Thus saith the Lord, refrain thy voice from weeping, and thine eyes from tears, for thy work shall be rewarded, saith the Lord, and they shall come again from the land of the enemy. Then it says, to understand these verses, we must first look into the historical background of them. It says, Rachel, the wife of Jacob, had but two sons of her own, Joseph and Benjamin. So that is the only two sons of Jacob to Rachel. They were the only sons that were born to Jacob in the promised land. Rachel died while giving birth to Benjamin. Now, I would like to emphasize clearly this very wonderful prophecy. And this is typifying the woman represented by the Ephesus, giving birth to that seed of the woman, represented by Benjamin. Brothers and sisters, now it says here, they were the only sons that were born to Jacob in the promised land. Rachel died while giving birth to Benjamin, and so she herself could not have wept for the loss of her children. They were both with her when she died. Hence, the only conclusion one can come to is that Rachel is, in this scripture, is figurative. Let us distinctly separate the typical Rachel and the figurative Rachel, because this figurative Rachel, brothers and sisters, is pointing, it says, after the death of Solomon, the kingdom was divided. The 10 tribes taking the north and the 2 tribes taking the south. The tribe of Joseph was in the one kingdom and the tribe of Benjamin in the other. So it says, Rachel therefore must be the figurative mother of the children of both kingdoms, Judah and Israel. Therefore, this Rachel must be the last ordained ministry, the woman that will give birth to the 12 tribes, 144,000 living saints. And this woman, according to Jeremiah, verse 15 and 16, on Jeremiah 31, it says that she will be weeping because there are many of her children will be martyred for their faith, brothers and sisters. And that is the fulfillment of Revelation 14:13, indicating that there are many shepherds rod believers that will be martyred for their faith when that horn power is at work against God, against His truth, and against His people. Now, I would like to read in 3SM 419 and then go back to our subject. In 3SM page 419, let's read. It says, many children will be taken away. So let's read the statement. Ere long, we are to be brought into straight and trying places. 3SM page 419. Many children will be taken away. Now let us read the whole paragraph. It says, ere long, we are to be brought into straight and trying places, and the many children brought into the world will in mercy be taken away before the time of trouble. And it is pointing, brothers and sisters, to the fulfillment of Jeremiah 31, verse 15 and verse 16. Our fellow brethren, brothers and sisters, will be martyred for their faith in the Protestant period. The treading of the horse is the massacring of the Christian. And that is the time when that mystical number 666 will come in the stage of action. And we will deal that subject on the subject, the beast and its image. Now let us go back to our subject concerning Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 to 8. Now, we try our very best that we could emphasize the focal point, the particular object in view in Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 to 8. In each chariot. Now, in this study, brothers and sisters, on the first chariot, to repeat again, in reality, it is not the martyrdom, which is the focal point of this subject, the paradox of the ages, but rather the destination. Now, the reason why God did not place any destination of the first chariot, although the description is it was led by red horses, the first significance is pointing to the first section. And that is why, the reason that why God placed 2 horses in each chariot to indicate that there are 2 sections of leadership. Now, the first red horses is the apostolic leadership. The candlestick in Revelation 11 verse 3. the second candlestick in Revelation 11 verse 3, while the Bible was being written. Because that is the statement in 2SR. I would like to read again. So, when the Bible was completely written in 100 AD, that section of the second candlestick of Revelation 11 verse 3 also ended. So it says here, 2SR 284, thus we have a candlestick for each of the two sections of God's church while the scriptures were being written. The first one is the Jewish church when the Old Testament were being written, and the second is the Apostolic church when the New Testament are being written. Therefore, the period of the Apostolic church ended in 100 AD when the Bible were completely written. And the significance by which there is no destination, according to 2 TG 22:22, indicates that the apostles, they did not left Jerusalem. They did not left the vineyard. But the mere fact that Bethlehem says in tract number 2 that the first chariot represents the church up to 538 AD, then the second red horse must be representing the Ephesus, the second section of the early Christian church. And the reason that God did not place a destination showing that nobody knows where the woman went during that time. Brothers and sisters, she was out of civilization, which perfectly corroborating to the occurrence in Isaiah 7 verse 1, by which the Syrian and the Israelite confederacy, when they attacked their own brethren, brothers and sisters, which is pointing to Judah, they could not prevail against it. And Bethlehem says in tract 14, page 33, that it finds parallel during the dark ages of religion, when the apostate church represented by Israel and confederated to Syrian or pagan, which represents the Catholic Church. The significance that they could not prevail against it is that they could not be able to find the location of the woman where God hides the woman, because she need to give birth. But that woman, she died while giving birth to antitypical Benjamin during the dark ages of religion, brothers and sisters. Although we will discuss that subject more fully on the subject concerning the woman, but we are focusing to Zechariah chapter 6 verses 1 to 8. Now let us now proceed to the second chariot, the black horses. Brothers and sisters, the black horses, why is it that God placed two horses to indicate two sections? The first chariot, the two red horses, the first section is the apostolic church. There is no destination because all of them died in Jerusalem. They did not left the vineyard. The second section, represented by the second red horse, points out to the Ephesus. Although she left the vineyard, she went into the wilderness, but nobody knows where she went. That is why there is no destination, because nobody knows the location of the woman. That even the dragon who followed her in the wilderness, he had not been able to locate the location of the woman. The woman is out of civilization, meaning nobody knows. There is no historical record, brothers and sisters, because if the dragon been able to locate the location of the woman, then Jesus Christ lost his own power, because it is Jesus Christ who hides the woman miraculously during the dark ages, according to tract number 12, page 43. There are two reasons that Jesus Christ need to hide the woman, because the woman, brothers and sisters, she need to deliver first her seed, brothers and sisters, and she was about to deliver, and while delivering the seed, she died giving birth to that seed, and that seed, being still in her infancy, needed to be nourished, brothers and sisters. Now let us go to the second chariot, the black horses. Why is it that God placed two horses to the second chariot? Now, I fully believe that this chariot is represented by the four great denominations, while on the first chariot represented by two candlesticks. You see, the first chariot is represented by the two candlesticks, but the second chariot is represented by four candlesticks. That is Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, and Sardis. And it is called by the shepherd's rod the four great denominations. Now, I would like to read here in 2SR concerning the four great denominations. 2SR page 267. what about the four great denominations that were raised up prior to that time, namely the Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodist, and Christian, or in other words, pointing to the Baptists. It says, what about the four great denominations that were raised up prior to that time, namely the Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodist, and Christian? Were they not the woman, the church? What is the answer? No, they are not the woman, because it was answered in 268. It says, let us read again, 2SR 268. The foregoing explanation answers one of our questions. The Protestant churches which were raised up before the woman returned from the wilderness were in total darkness concerning the sanctuary service. Therefore, they are not represented by the woman or by the temple. For as we stated before, the typical temples represent both sections of the church with two divine laws, namely moral and ceremonial. Or in other words, the woman must be a church by which they keep the Sabbath. And these churches, Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist, all of them are Sunday keepers. They are not represented by the woman, but rather they are represented by the little help that had been raised by God during the dark ages as fulfillment in Daniel 11 verse 33 and verse 34. Let us read tract number 12 on page 80. These verses, Daniel 11 verse 33 and 34, it says, these verses, besides foreshadowing the martyrdom of the faithful followers of Christ, predict the reformation, the little help. And of course, that statement, little help, that is pertaining to the woman. That in order for the dragon, while the dragon is trying to find out the location of the woman, in order to divert the attention of the dragon, God raised up the little help, the reformation, to face the dragon, brothers and sisters, or to make a protest to the papacy, which is the instruments of the dragon during the dark ages. And that's what they did. Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodist, and Christian or Baptist. Now, why is it that God places two horses, two black horses on the four great denominations represented by the second chariot? We already explained the two represent two sections. Now, in the first chariot, it is represented, the first section is represented by the apostles, brothers and sisters. And there is no destination because they died in Jerusalem. But the second is the epistles. There is no destination because nobody knows where the woman was hidden. How about the second chariot, the four great denominations? Now, I would like to connect to you Ezekiel chapter 4. Let's read. And I know it is very familiar to us. Here in page 119. Lentils, type of doctrine of baptism by immersion. Lentils are used to represent the fourth portion of truth. Alexander Campbell is credited with making the fourth step upward by teaching the doctrine of baptism by immersion, symbolized by the lentils. The variety lentils representing the fourth doctrine, baptism by immersion, is not known or used even as much as barley. So with the truth of immersion, baptism by immersion in the old-fashioned way is not generally practiced, even as lentils are not generally used. Again, God has used the right kind of symbol to represent this portion of truth. Now, ponder deeply. Brothers and sisters, Alexander Campbell is not the founder of the Baptists. It is John Smith. If you will look into the historical event, even before Alexander Campbell was even born, John Smith already discovered the baptism by immersion. As a matter of fact, Alexander Campbell was baptized in the Baptist church. Or in other words, even before Alexander Campbell was even born, the Baptist church was already in existence. Now, would you think B.T. Hotep was mistaken by placing Alexander Campbell, brothers and sisters, as the founder of the Baptist church? There is no dispute to the fact that the founder of the Lutheran denomination is Martin Luther. That is correct. And then the founder of the Presbyterian church, that is John Knox. That is still correct, brothers and sisters. Now, how about, brothers and sisters, Alexander Campbell? And not only Alexander Campbell, as well as John Wesley. We are talking about Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodist, and Baptist. Four great denominations. Lutherans, the founder of Lutherans is Martin Luther. John Knox, he is really the founder of the Presbyterian Church. But historically, these two, Wesley and Campbell, John Wesley is not the founder of the Methodist Church. Although I could no longer remember, but I have that historical book. John Wesley is not the founder of the Methodist Church. And Alexander Campbell is not the founder of the Baptist Church. Why is it that God places these two men, John Wesley and Alexander Campbell? It is closely connected to our subject, the two black horses. They went toward the north, brothers and sisters. Now, the north country is Babylon. Martin Luther, as well as John Knox, they went to the papacy, make a protest, because accordingly to tract number 2, Babylon there is represented by the papacy. But the shepherd's rod made it so plain that there are two Babylons. Now, I would like to read again, 2SR 245. Thus, the second angel's message of Revelation 14 verse 8 was proclaimed immediately after the disappointment, saying, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. That is, the world in 1844 fell in the same manner as the one before the flood. The present world is called Babylon because the kingdom of Babylon is the immediate one after the flood. Thus, Babylon became the mother of the nations. 2SR 245. Although we'll discuss that specifically the subject, the second angel's message or the fall of Babylon. But just to remind that the type teaches that there are two Babylons. The first Babylon is the antediluvian world, by which the Babylon mentioned there is pointing to the churches, because there was no state at that time. There was no imperialism. The state began after the flood, and the originator is Nimrod. And that is the second period of Babylon, according to the shepherd's rod. But here, brothers and sisters, we can immediately discern, Zechariah chapter 6, verse 1-8, that there are two Babylon. The north country. The north country, which is represented by the sea, which is the continent of Europe, brothers and sisters, and even the Spirit prophecy, Prophets and Kings, 188. I would like to read this reading. In heathen Africa and in the Catholic lands of Europe. Therefore, Europe is the Catholic lands. Prophets and Kings, page 188. Now, we can immediately discern, because as far as the history is thus concerned, and I will show to you, brothers and sisters, according to the history, that John Wesley and Alexander Campbell, both of them, reached the shore of the United States of America. Now, here in this study, we can easily discern that why is it that God places two horses on the second chariot, the four great denominations, to let us know, let us distinctly separate the four great denominations in the old country or in the old world and the four great denominations in the new world. And that is why God places two horses, and both of them are in bondage, brothers and sisters. Now, let us connect to the study of the Seven Trumpets. Let's read tract number 5. So, here in tract number 5, on page 80 and page 81. But I would like to read, to begin first in page 79. It is a deep study, but I would like to only touch those portions that is connected to our subject. We have a definite study concerning about it in the subject concerning the seven trumpets, more particularly to the last three trumpets, the wood trumpets, 5th, 6th, and 7th. Now let us read. It says, tract number 5, page 79. With the 14th verse of Revelation chapter 9 begins the description of the 6th trumpet, or Revelation 9 verse 14. And it ends with the 14th verse of Revelation 11, which announces the second woe, 6th trumpet is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Accordingly, its prophetic event recorded between Revelation 9:14 and 11:14 must find its fulfillment in the period of the 6th trumpet between the first and the second woes. So, whatever the event recorded on chapter 9, verse 15, up to verse 21, then the whole chapter of chapter 10, and Revelation 11, verse 1 to 13, it must find its fulfillment between Revelation 9:14 and 11:14. And that portion is wonderful, very wonderful prophecy. Needs more time to explain, brothers and sisters, because we know that chapter 10 included there many subjects, and more particularly to the experience of William Miller, right? Now, thus the experience of William Miller had been sandwiched by Revelation 9:14. Think it thoroughly, brothers and sisters. Let us distinguish distinctly separate the groundwork and the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy. And secondly, one of the things that I think it is not familiar with the Bidian is the seven trumpets in the heavenly sanctuary. Let us distinctly separate the seven trumpets on the earth, the occurrence on the earth, and the occurrence in heaven, because the shepherd's rod declared clearly, in reality, the main prophetic event. Let me read to you here in track number 5, page 34. Track number 5, page 34, it says, in the main, however, the trumpets and the seals portray an event which is future from John's time and which takes place in heaven. You see, takes place in heaven. That is the main prophetic event. Whatever the subject concerning the seven trumpets and the seven seals, it says it portray an event which is future from John's time and which takes place in heaven. Although they also portray kindred events. So the kindred events of these related events, some are contributory and some are consequent to the main prophetic event. The former naturally precede and the latter naturally follow it historically. So the kindred events must be the occurrence on the earth, but the main prophetic event is the occurrence that takes place in heaven. And that is why B.T. Hontham says in track number 8 on page 5, I would like to read this statement. So correctly, to understand this prophetic event in its entirety, we must carefully differentiate the part which takes place in heaven from the part which takes place on earth. Now, I would like to read again, track number 8, page 5. So correctly, to understand this prophetic event in its entirety, we must carefully differentiate the part which takes place in heaven from the part which takes place on earth. Now, let us go back to our subject, brothers and sisters. I would like to read track number 5, page 79, page 80 and 81. It says, in the light of this fact, we see that the time in which the two witnesses of Revelation 11 verse 3 were to prophesy 1,260 days clothed in sackcloth must occur during the sounding of the sixth trumpet. And being in the future tense, the priest shall prophesy 1,260 days in Revelation 11 verse 3 shows that at the time the trumpet began sounding, this period of 1,260 days was yet future. For sure, this 1,260 days in Revelation 11 verse 3 cannot be the dark ages, although it can be applied indirectly. Why? Because the shepherd's rod made it so plain that this 1,260 days, brothers and sisters, will be fulfilled when the sixth trumpet began sounding. And at the time when the sixth trumpet began sounding, at the moment when the sixth trumpet began sounding, this 1,260 days was still future because the scripture is inscribed in future tense. Now, we the Bidian fully believe that, brothers and sisters, the sounding of the sixth trumpet in its primary phase occurred in the days of William Miller, before Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place, and that was in 1833, which typifying the sounding of the trumpets in the Levitical priest ceremonial system, according to Leviticus 23, right? That before the high priest entered to the most holy place on the Day of Atonement, there is a Feast of Trumpets, and that was 10 days. And in prophecy, 1 day equivalent to 1 year, therefore that it is equivalent to 10 years. And that's what happened. William Miller began to sound the trumpet in 1833. So that is typifying the Feast of Trumpets, because the high priest will enter to the most holy place in 1844. Therefore, before Jesus Christ will enter the most holy place in 1844, so there must be first the Feast of Trumpets, and that is found the fulfillment in the message proclaimed by William Miller, which began to sound in 1833. Now, I would like to read this reading in White House Recruiter on page 19. The only revelation, I would like to read White House Recruiter, page 19. The only revelation of new prophetic truth subsequent to the Reformation is the announcement of the year in which was to begin the work of cleansing the sanctuary, primarily in behalf of the dead, based on Daniel 8:14, but not then fully understood, as its announcement was made by the First-day Adventists, and that is the Millerites movement. It necessarily follows that they were the third group of servants with a new and distinctive message, and as is well known, they started proclaiming it in the year 1833, announcing that the cleansing of the sanctuary was to commence in the year 1844. Thus, in 1833, the clock of the parabolic time struck the hour of 6. White House Recruiter, page 19. So the shepherds had made it so plain that the trumpet had been blown since 1833, typifying the Feast of Trumpets before the Day of Atonement. And it was 10 days, but in the prophecy, it is 10 years, from 1833 to 1843. Now, in the primary application, in the primary phase, 1833 is the commencement of the sounding of the sixth trumpet. Because the statement in track number 5, I would like to read on page 78, track number 5, page 78. In coming from the golden altar, the command, loose the four angels, shows that the sixth trumpet sounded sometime before the veil to the most holy apartment of the heavenly sanctuary was lifted. So this word sometime point to 1833, that before the veil was lifted, there must be sounding of the trumpet. And it is pointing to the period of the sixth trumpet, brothers and sisters, when Jesus Christ will enter to the most holy place. Began sounding in 1833. Now, if the sixth trumpet began sounding in 1833, and the shepherd says that when the sixth trumpet began sounding, this 1,260 days was still future, then it could not be during the dark ages of religion, 538 AD to 1798. Otherwise, we'll be saying that the sixth trumpet commenced prior to 538 AD, because the statement says that this 1,260 days was still future when the sixth trumpet began sounding. So this 1,260 days, brethren, it points out to the last martyrdom, brothers and sisters, the last martyrdom in the third period of the exceeding great horn, the massacring of the Christians, which is soon, very soon, will be realized, brothers and sisters. Now let us continue reading. It says in page 80, in track number 5, the voice which came from the golden altar said to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. In order to identify the four angels, we must first understand the literal meaning of the river Euphrates. The capital city of ancient Babylon was built on either side of the Euphrates, thus dividing the city into two parts. The river was also the source of water, supplying a fortifying moat about the city. So because the ancient Babylonians were the first to build on the banks of the Euphrates, and because the original application must be attached to the original settlers there, the great river Euphrates emerges as a type of the waters where the horse seated. Revelation 17:15, modern Babylon. Now let us distinctly separate the modern Babylon during the Dark Ages, because that is pointing to the continent of Europe. But let us distinctly separate the modern Babylon, which typifying the Babylon after the flood, because that points out to the new world, United States of America. Now let us read, brothers and sisters. And no one can deny the fact that America, brothers and sisters, is the mother of all nations. Remember, brothers and sisters, the shepherds had declared clearly. I would like to read first here. To symbolic code number 1, page 8. As the fulfillment of this prophecy is yet future, we cannot now tell who will then be the head, king of the north, of this prophetic nation, modern Babylon, that is symbolized by the two-horned beast. Now, I would like to read again the statement. To symbolic code number 1, page 8. As the fulfillment of this prophecy is yet future, we cannot now tell who will then be the head, meaning the president, king of the north, of this prophetic nation, modern Babylon, that is symbolized by the two-horned beast. Then who is modern Babylon in this reading? To symbolic code number 1, page 8. That is United States of America, because the continent of Europe never symbolized as the two-horned beast dominion. Great controversy, 440, point and mystically to the United States of America. Now, let us continue reading here in track number 5. It says, now in order for there to be a modern Babylon, still track number 5, page 80 and page 81. Now, in order for there to be a modern Babylon, there must necessarily be a repetition today of the conditions and events essentially characterizing ancient Babylon. in its connection with God's people. Consequently, their captivity in Babylon, the type, Jeremiah 29 verse 10. How many years that they were in captivity in Babylon? 70 years. Type and antitype should exactly fit and perfectly match. It cannot exactly fit and perfectly match the occurrence during the Dark Ages because that is 1,260 years. Since the number is 70, therefore, it must also be number 70. Now, I would like to emphasize that clearly. Now, let us continue reading. Track number 5, page 80 and 81. Now, in order for there to be a modern Babylon, there must necessarily be a repetition today of the condition and events essentially characterizing ancient Babylon in its connection with God's people. Consequently, their captivity in Babylon, the type, Jeremiah 29 verse 10, must find its parallel in Babylon, the antitype. What does it mean by parallel? What is the definition by the word parallel? It is two lines by which equidistant. So, the exact meaning of parallel is that two lines by which the measurement of the other is the same measurement with the other. That's what it means by the word parallel. And that is also the meaning of type. The type and antitype should exactly fit, not only to the event, but as well as to the time. Great Controversy 399. These types were fulfilled not only to the event, but as well as to the time. Also in One SR Packet Edition, page 73. And also in Answerer number 3, page 23. And for sure, since we are talking about the prophecy of Zechariah, then the answer is found in the book of Zechariah. Now, let us read 1 TG number 11. Here in 1 TG number 11, page 7, and it is found in Zechariah chapter 1 on verse 12. Then it says, Then the angel of the Lord answered and said, O Lord of hosts, how long wilt thou not have mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah, against which thou hast had indignation these 70 years? The prophet Jeremiah's prediction that the Jews were to spend 70 years in Babylonian captivity had ended, although they were still in Babylon. But since this symbolical prophecy finds its fulfillment in our day, instead of in Zechariah's day, the angels plea for mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah are therefore find its direct application in this day. But the shepherd says, this is a symbolical 70 years. Therefore, the parallelism in this instance is to the number 70. But the number 70 is pointing to the 70 jubilees. That the 70th jubilee, brothers and sisters, is the proclamation of the deliverance. And that is the fulfillment of 1 TG, number 46. It says here, 1 TG 46, page 7. Let us read the statement. It matters not where God's people be, nor under what circumstances they be placed. They shall nevertheless all hear his servants proclaiming the year of final jubilee. And all are to be let out free. All are to share this great ever-increasing spiritual feast. It says the year of final jubilee, inscribed in definite article. The year of the final jubilee. We'll discuss that subject on the subject, the jubilee. Now, let us go back to track number 5, brothers and sisters. Track number 5, page 80 and page 81. It says, Now in order for there to be a modern Babylon, there must necessarily be a repetition today of the conditions and events essentially characterizing ancient Babylon in its connection with God's people. Consequently, their captivity in Babylon, the type, Jeremiah 29 verse 10, must find its parallel in Babylon, the antitype. The parallelism is number 70. The 70 years captivity and pointing to the 70 jubilees. Very obviously, therefore, the angels being bound in the great river Euphrates must be figurative of the Christian church during the period of her captivity in antitypical Babylon, that great city rising after John's time. Then it says, Furthermore, the statement made by the voice from the golden altar, loose the 4 angels which are bound, conclusively shows that when the voice spoke, the church, the angels, was already in captivity and was to be loosed. Why is it that the church here, or the angels in plural form, but the significance is in singular form? The church. Now, brothers and sisters, to repeat again, this is a wonderful prophecy. The church mentioned here is is the second chariot, ruled or led by the black horses. And the black horses, since the shepherd's rod, through the inspiration of the Holy Ghost, distinctly divided the four leaders. And before this light came, I'm really thinking, why is it that the first two, Lutherans and Presbyterian, the founder is Martin Luther and the founder Presbyterian is Knox, is the real historical event. They are the founder of these two denominations. But when I studied the historical event, I found out that John Wesley and Alexander Campbell, John Wesley is not the founder of the Methodists. Alexander Campbell is not the founder of the Baptist Church. And immediately I'm wondering, why is it that B.T. Hotep, in the first two of the four great denominations, both of them are the real founder of the Lutherans and Presbyterian, and why is it that the last two of the four great denominations, these two are not the founders of the Methodists and the Baptists? There must be an absolute significance. I've tried my best to study closely, but it was not revealed until this very year in 2020. And we found out, brothers and sisters, that the accurate significance is first referring to Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 to 8. That let us distinctly separate, brothers and sisters, the second chariot in the old world and the second chariot in the new world. Brothers and sisters, or let us distinctly separate the four great denominations, the Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodist, and Baptist in the old world, and let us distinctly separate the Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodist, and Baptist in the new world. And we will elaborate that later, brothers and sisters, because the most important part in this study is the fourth chariot. Now, we already explained the significance of the two horses, brothers and sisters, of the first chariot. The first red horse is the apostolic leadership or the apostolic church, and the significance that they have no destination, meaning they did not left Jerusalem. All of them died in Jerusalem. And the second red horse is the Ephesus, which represented by the woman who left the vineyard, according to tract number 12, page 43. And the significance, why is it that God did not place destination of the woman, indicates that nobody knows where she went. Out of civilization, hidden by Jesus Christ miraculously. Nobody knows. Now, we are here in the second chariot, brothers and sisters. And for sure, 100%, I think the focal point in reality is during the fulfillment of Revelation chapter 11, or at the time when the divine command will declare, loose the four angels which were bound in the great river Euphrates. Because if you will apply that during the dark ages of religion, then we'll be saying that the sixth trumpet sounded prior to 538 AD. But the voice of inspiration plainly indicating that this prophecy must find its fulfillment on the time when the sixth trumpet began sounding. And at the time when the sixth trumpet began sounding, this 1,260 days was still future. The sixth trumpet began sounding in 1833. Therefore, this 1,260 days was still future from that time onwards, brothers and sisters. And we will discuss this on the subject concerning the trumpets, and more particularly, brothers and sisters, on the last three trumpets, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh trumpet, the last three trumpets, which is a wood trumpets. Now, let us continue in tract number 5, page 81. And then it says, the execution of the command, loose the four angels. Remember, the four angels represents the church. And it says, the execution of the command, loose the four angels, meaning to set the church free from her captivity in Babylon, resulted in her being liberated from her long bondage to the tyranny of church-state rule, and in the Bibles being restored to God's people, so that they might study and worship in fear and in favor of no man, and in an accountability only to their conscience and to their God. In the consequent dissolution of the church-state union, the four angels were loose. Now, let us apply the primary application, brothers and sisters. Now, after 1798, meaning these four great denominations had been free, and where they went, brothers and sisters, historically. Now, let us read verse 4 SP 398, the coming conflict. It says, the greatest and most favored nation upon the earth is the United States. A gracious providence has shielded this country and poured upon her the choicest of heaven's blessings. Here the persecuted and oppressed have found refuge. So, the persecuted and oppressed found refuge in the United States of America, according to this reading, or SP 398. Now, here's another statement that I would like to read, brothers and sisters. Tract number 8, page 24. It says, although the marking and the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 include only the church, Judah and Israel, the hearting by the winds and the hearting by the angels, Revelation 7 include all the world, both the earth and the sea, each of which is indicative of a different locality. The sea in the realm of nature, the storehouse, home of the waters, is therefore in the realm of symbols, the birthplace of the nations, the old country. The earth, the opposite of the sea, is correspondingly a domain away from the old country. It is located to John in the symbol of the two-horned beast, coming up not out of the sea but out of the earth. Revelation 13 verse 11. The only place where trees naturally grow. And as according to Daniel 4 verse 20 to 22, trees are figurative of rulers. Therefore, the trees in this instance represent the ancient men, which before the house, Ezekiel 9 verse 6, a fact which revealed that in this period the church headquarters are in the two-horned beast dominion, the new world of the earth. Tract number 8, page 24. Now, the voice of inspiration says, the only place by which the trees naturally grow is in the two-horned beast domain, represented by the earth. Brothers and sisters, or in other words, the trees in that instance represented by the leadership, without any doubt, they are also represented by the heads on the leopard-like beast. Although we studied that clearly in the subject, the beast study, but brothers and sisters, if we fully believe that the seven heads of the leopard-like beast, according to the shepherd's rod, represents the high places, and I do fully believe that the high places is represented by headquarters or represented by the trees. It says here in page 95 in 2SR, the seven heads are to symbolically point out these high places ruled by unsanctified leaders who have attempted to mix the sacred with the common and refused to hear the word of the Lord. 2SR page 95. And if you fully believe, as enumerated by the shepherd's rod, one by one, brothers and sisters, it says 107, it would have been unwise and useless to devise this prophetic beast if the symbols would fail to reveal Protestantism as they do Catholicism. Before the 1,260 years ended in 1798, the four Protestant denominations were already in existence, namely the Lutheran, Presbyterian, Methodist, and Christian. But after 1798 came the First-day Adventists, and the Seventh-day Adventist from 1844 to 1929 completed his seven heads. Now let us analyze closely, brothers and sisters. If the seven heads of the leopard-like beast, the two of them is the pointing to the First-day Adventists, which first point to the Millerites movement, and then the Seventh-day Adventists, by which these two are located in the United States of America. Now, how about the five, brothers and sisters, which is the Catholics, Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodists, and Baptists? Are we saying that in the illustration, the leopard-like beast, while the leopard-like beast was standing in the sea, and the sea represent the old country, which is Europe, brothers and sisters, and then the five heads located in the continent of Europe, and the other two heads located in the New World, which is United States of America? And would you think the illustration would be perfect, by which it utters the impossibility that the beast is, because the beast represents the world. As I've said, although it will be discussed on the subject, the beast and its image, but I would like to emphasize first that according to the shepherd's rod, it says 2TG 36, page 4, it says 2TG, 36 page 6 rather, it says, the beast, 2TG 36, page 6, the beast, as though all other symbolical beasts we have seen, represents the world. Now, how about the leopard-like beast? What world does the leopard-like beast represent, brothers and sisters? Now, if the leopard-like beast is represented by the old world, which is the continent of Europe, then the entire seven heads of the leopard-like beast must be in the continent of Europe, because it is very illogical that the other two heads is found in the United States of America. There must be an absolute significance of that, brothers and sisters, that the seven heads must be in the place by which the leopard-like beast is represented. Now, why is it that in the book of Daniel, in Daniel chapter 7, let us read, Daniel chapter 7 on verse 1, it says, "In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters." Verse 2, "Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens trove upon the great sea." And in the great controversy, it says in 440, the voice of inspiration describe it as the turbulent sea. I would like to read here. In the great controversy 440, it says, and let us define first the word turbulent in the dictionary so that we could have understanding. It says, "But the beast with the lamb-like horns were seen coming up out of the earth." Let's define first the word turbulent. "Instead of overthrowing other powers to establish itself, the nation thus represented must arise in territory previously unoccupied and grow up gradually and peacefully. It could not then arise among the crowded and struggling nationalities of the old world, that turbulent sea of peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. It must be so in the western continent." Now, turbulent meaning disorder, confusion, or violently, or characterized by conflict. So that is the description given by the dictionary, or the definition given by the dictionary, turbulent sea. But why is it that the sea on Daniel chapter 7, there is a description, turbulent sea. But the sea in Revelation 13 verse 1, there is no description that it is a turbulent sea. Just simply by saying sea. I fully believe that there must be an accurate significance for that. Why God placed turbulent sea to Daniel 7 verse 1 and 2. And in Revelation 13 verse 1, there is no description of this sea, if this sea is turbulent. And it says in Revelation 13 verse 1, "And I stood upon the son of the sea." So the prophet is standing upon the son of the sea. "And saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." Unlike with Daniel chapter 7, it is a turbulent sea because it says, I would like to read Daniel 7, it says in verse 2, "Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea." So there is great winds that strove the great sea. Maybe it is a tidal wave because it strove the great sea. And that is why in the great controversy 440 it says turbulent sea. But God did not show that to John the Revelator. There was no description that the four winds strove the sea. The prophet simply saying that, "And I stood upon the son of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." To repeat again, brothers and sisters, there must be an accurate significance, and there must be wide difference between the sea in Revelation 13 verse 1 and between the sea in Daniel 7 verse 2. And the same with the statement in tract number 5. The one we read, the quotation is the sea in Revelation 17:15. Now, let us read again the statement in tract number 5. In tract number 5, page 80, the sea mentioned here is Revelation 17:15, but it says modern Babylon. Now, I would like to emphasize again that the great river Euphrates emerges as a type. The great river Euphrates emerges as a type of the waters where the horse seated. Revelation 17 verse 15. Modern Babylon. But the fact is, the type, brothers and sisters, that Babylon became a world empire, and his dominion reaches throughout the whole earth. Remember the dominion of King Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylon mentioned here in Jeremiah chapter 29. But how about during the dark ages of religion, represented by the modern Babylon, which is the antitypical, antediluvian world? Now remember, I would like to read first the statement in 2SR. Here in 2SR page 123, I would like to read, "Thus the symbol of the woman sitting on the waters," that is Revelation 17:15, right? "Thus the symbol of the woman sitting on the waters represents the period before the Reformation." We know the Reformation begins in 1500 AD. That is the Reformation taken by Luther. So thus the symbol of the woman sitting on the waters represents the period before the Reformation. This was true during the period of papal supremacy. For at that time, the papacy ruled the Roman world, peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Thus the woman sat on the waters during the 1260 prophetic years of Daniel 7:25. But she is yet to sit on the heads and on the beast. Had she sat on the nondescript beast instead of on the waters, it would have been wrongly symbolized. For the woman, by the tool of Catholicism, did not reign over all the world, beast, but over many peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, many waters. Therefore, the woman sitting upon the scarlet-colored beast denote an international relio-political system. Now, I would like to emphasize the statement that the woman had not been able to reign over all the world by the tool of Catholicism. That is very plain, brothers and sisters. But it was predicted beforehand, according to 2SR page 139. Let us read 2SR page 139. These are facts which cannot be denied. However, there is another fruit that bears evidence of the same. Say the prophet, and after thee, the king of Babylon, shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. Daniel 2 verse 39. The brass kingdom is accepted to represent Grecia, but the fact is that Grecia never did bear rule over all the earth. The most distant point of the compass reached by Alexander the Great was a portion of India. Neither did Imperial Rome bear rule over all the earth. What then? Is Daniel wrong in the interpretation of the dream? If there is any error, Daniel cannot be at fault. The responsibility would naturally fall on God, who was the overseer of all the writings and the interpretations of the scriptures. If Daniel had made a mistake, it was God's duty to have him correct it. But as God is perfect in all his work, he cannot allow error in his holy word. Daniel is correct in his interpretation, and the brass kingdom must bear rule over all the earth, for all else may fail, but God's word shall stand forever. 2SR page 139 and 140. Now, look at the statement, brothers and sisters. It is concerning Greece, because Greece is represented by the brass kingdom. Because Daniel 2 verse 39 is pointing very plain that the brass kingdom shall bear rule over all the earth. But Brother Hotep says the Grecian Empire never been able to rule all over the earth, even the Imperial Rome. And we already read in 2SR 123 that even the woman during the Dark Ages had not been able to reign over all the world by the toll of Catholicism. 2SR 123. Now the Bible must be plain, brothers and sisters. Or in other words, since it is predicted beforehand that it is the exceeding great horn that shall be ruled over all the earth, and that exceeding great horn is divided into three divisions. And the reason that it says the brass kingdom to indicate the third division of the exceeding great horn, because brass is in the numerical value of number 3 according to track number 2, page 13. Now I would like to read first track number 2, page 13. Gold, being first of value in the order of metals, is singularly adopted in symbolizing the first empire after the flood. Silver, being second of gold, is the number 2 metal and exactly symbolizes the second empire made of Persia. While brass, being third to gold, precisely fits the third empire, Grecia, and consequently has the numerical value of 3. So the only difference in Zechariah chapter 6, the mountain is made of brass, is that the significance that the fulfillment of Zechariah chapter 6 verse 1 to 8 must found in the third period of the church history, divided into 3 divisions. The antediluvian world, from creation to the flood, and then the second period is the post-diluvian world, from the flood to Jesus Christ or to crucifixion, and the third period is from crucifixion to the second coming of Christ, the Christian era. But Daniel 2 verse 39 is pointing to the 3 periods of the exceeding great horn. The mere fact, brothers and sisters, that Daniel declared clearly that it is the brass kingdom that will be ruled over all the earth. But in reality, if that brass kingdom is pointing to the Grecian Empire, it was already in the past, and historically, the Grecian Empire never been able to reign all over the earth. Therefore, it points out to the three periods of the exceeding great horn. The first period is pagan Rome, and it was already answered in 2SR 140 that imperial Rome never been ruled all over the earth. The second period of the exceeding great horn is the papacy, and it was answered in 2SR 123 that the papacy, or the woman during the Dark Ages, through the tool of Catholicism, not been able to rule all over the world or all over the earth. Therefore, there is no escaping the conclusion that the predicted event that the exceeding great horn will be ruled all over the earth must be in the last period of the exceeding great horn, which is the Protestant period, from 1799 onwards, brothers and sisters. And we are living in that period of time by which the Shepherd says that that exceeding great horn is at work against God, against His people. I would like to read again track number 3, page 25. Track number 3, page 25. From this juxtaposition of Daniel 8:11 and 12 and Daniel 11 verse 31, the reader will observe that both scriptures are speaking of the same power, and Christ predicting the signs of the end of the world as He looked forward along the stream of time declared, when ye, His followers, who were to be living at the time that this horn power was at work against God, against His truth, and against His people, therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Matthew 24 verse 15 and 16. These clear words of Christ Himself placed the work of this power in the future from His time. Track number 3, page 25. And it is the time in which we are living, brothers and sisters, by which this horn power was at work against God, against His people, and against His truth. And hoping that you will study closely this prophecy before everything is too late. Or in other words, before the overflowing scourge shall come upon the dwellers of the earth, brothers and sisters. Now, to go back again on in this study, although it is closely connected to the subject, the beast and its image, but I would like to say that let us distinctly separate the leopard-like beast in the old world and the leopard-like beast in the new world, brothers and sisters. And in reality, brothers and sisters, the focal point of the leopard-like beast is the leopard-like beast in the new world. The mere fact that when John the Revelator saw the beast, there was no such description that the sea is turbulent, that the sea is, or the four winds is striving the sea, and so that the sea is described by inspiration as a turbulent sea, indicates clearly that the sea that was shown by God to John the Revelator is very calm, brothers and sisters, very peaceful. There are no waves roaring, brothers and sisters, and there must be an accurate significance. We should not forget that the only vision that was shown by God to John is the closing work or the closing part of the beast. And the beginning part of the beast was not shown by God to John, but it was revealed by God to Ptah. I'm hoping that you will listen carefully to our subject, the beast and its image. Now, I would like to go back again to our reading, brothers and sisters. We are already on the second chariot. By which the second chariot, the focal point is their destination. They go toward the north country. We already explained, brothers and sisters, the four chariots, I would like to read again in 2TG number 22. The four chariots represent the four spirits of God. Now, I would like to read 2TG 22, page 19. The prophet Zechariah was as anxious to know as we are. For he asked, "What are these, my Lord?" And to his question came the answer, "These are the four spirits of the heavens, which go forth from standing before the Lord of the whole earth." The angel's answer is positive. So the angel's answer is positive. The chariots, he declared, are the spirits of the heavens who stand before the Lord and who are sent to go to and fro through the earth. Plainly then, these four teams and chariots symbolize four messages, four spirits sent from God sent from God's presence. And since all the messages from God are carried to and fro through the earth by the ministry and the church, the chariots and their teams, therefore are seen to symbolize the church at work in 4 different periods. Now, think it thoroughly. If these 4 chariots represented the 4 spirits cometh from the presence of God, then 100% these 4 chariots cannot displease the will of God because it comes from His presence. Therefore, let us distinctly separate, because the focal point in Zechariah chapter 6 is pointing to that chariot, to that horses by which it quieted God's Spirit. It displeases God's Spirit. Brothers and sisters, the statement in the Bible that it displeases God's Spirit, the first chariot is not involved, because there was no destination of the first chariot. Brothers and sisters, the one that is involved in this study is to the second, the third, and the fourth. And we need to carefully decipher, brothers and sisters. Now, for example, the second chariot, if it is represented by Martin Luther, John Knox, Wesley, and Campbell, for sure, they never displease the Spirit of God. The description in the shepherd's rod, brothers and sisters, let us read 2SR 228. Let's read the statement. It says, if the church, 228, 2SR, if the church was in the wilderness between the years 538 and 1798, in which period the above stated reformers did their wonderful work to bring about reformation by obedience to the scriptures, were they not called out and sent by God? Answer, surely they were. So that is the answer, because the answer also on 2 TG 22:19, these 4 spirits are the 4 spirits coming from the presence of God, sent by God to this earth. Now, concerning the second chariot, if it pertains first to these 4 inspired servants of God, Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodists, and Baptists, the question is that, are they not sent by God or not called out and sent by God? Answer, surely they were. There can be no doubt about it. Their work, character, and sacrifice answers the question. Think of Luther, the father of Protestantism, who risked his life like those God's great servants in the past. God, by the hand of Luther, tore asunder the doors of darkness, brought an end of the terrible persecution and bloodshed of the saints of the Most High, and caused the light in His written word to shine into the hearts of men. Had it not been for the earnest and zealous efforts of these godly reformers, the church would have been in the wilderness until this day, and there would have been no Protestantism. Thus, their unselfish service broke the power of despotism, and by the imprisonment of the Pope terminated the long prophetic period. Therefore, God, through the service of these men, was to bring the church from the wilderness and prepare the way for the third call at the 6th hour. SR 228. So that statement plainly indicating that there was no such instances that Luther or the Lutherans under the leadership of Martin Luther, or the Presbyterian under the leadership of John Knox, and the Methodists under the leadership of John Wesley, and the Baptists under the leadership of Alexander Campbell, that they displease the Spirit of God, that they are the causes why God's Spirit has been quieted in the North Country. Brothers and sisters, there must be an accurate significance of that declaration in Zechariah chapter 6, verse 8, and more particularly to the third chariot, the white horse. Look at the description. I would like to read to you in track number 2, the description of the white horses. Let's read the statement. In track number 2, on page 31, it says, to repeat, I would like to read this reading, track number 2, page 31. To repeat, the Millerite or First Advent movement, being the only one that never cast out any of its brethren, it's consequently the only church which can be represented by the white chariot, and the only one worthy of the name Philadelphia, brotherly love. And would you think that description, brothers and sisters, displeases God, the Millerites movement? Here's another statement in track number 2, page 33 and page 34. Of all the 7 churches, Revelation 2 and 3, only the Philadelphian, the Millerite church, did not run afoul these same satanic practices every true to God. It closed its brief but spotless career in 1844, its appointed destination, having lived its entire life under the personal supervision of its founder. It was never new modeled, thus being without condemnation, as perfectly illustrated by the third chariot and its white horses. It stands out in bold relief by the succeeding movement represented by the fourth chariot. So that description, the third chariot that had been led by the white horses, would you think under the leadership of William Miller, it displeases God? No. As a matter of fact, of all the churches, the Millerite movement, according to the reading, it is unspotted, brothers and sisters. And the focal point of this study is concerning Zechariah 6 verse 8, by which God's Spirit had been quieted in the north country. Although there is a great truth also concerning the second chariot, because it is closely connected to the prophecy in Revelation 11 verse 3. The four angels in that subject represent the four great denominations, but not the four great denominations in the old world, because they were already dead, brothers and sisters. Or in connection with the subject of the beast study, it was already explained that the only place by which the trees naturally grow is in the symbolical earth, the United States of America, in track number 8, page 24. So the focal point is the place by which these trees naturally grow, or the seven heads of the leopard-like beast, brothers and sisters. So, hoping that you will abide listening and viewing this program, because this very year, 2020 and 2021 for me, is very critical, brothers and sisters, and we are living in a very nick of time. I remember that in the Advent Review, that bold letter, brothers and sisters, and let me read to you that reading, and it is pertaining to, I would like to read, it says, the Philadelphian church, not a condition, came forth in 1844. So, no, the condition in reality did not came forth in 1844, but rather, brothers and sisters, the one that came forth in 1844 is the period of time, not the condition. And it says, let's read again, it says, not a condition came forth in 1844. And read volume 4, Spur Prophecy, page 268 to 269. And it says, see changes in you. Great Controversy 430. See next pages to reply to shut door allegations that hold no water. No matter if all our leading men should refuse light and truth, that door will still remain open. The Lord will raise up men who will give the people the message for this time. Testimonies to Ministers 107, 1893, Counselors to Writers and Editors, page 126. Beautiful Philadelphia was born, not buried, in 1844. And she goes forth through to the end, to the remnant. Words to the Little Flock, page 14. In the footnotes, Ellen G. White says much the same as this 1850 pioneer release. The straight testimony to the Laodicean, the church militant is not the church triumphant. And then it says, we must join the church triumphant. The Lord will surely pass us by and choose other agencies who will take hold of His work. When it will be seen, the Lord will take charge of the work Himself, and He calls a mysterious procession. The wise among us, if wise enough, joined the throng, and the door was shut. Our people were moving into line. They did not form the line. How could they? They were all asleep. Now, I would like to read to you, and I think this is the last two readings. First, in track number 2, concerning the church triumphant. It says, let us read, track number 2, page 18. In trumpet tones, these all too evident facts declare that the church in her present condition, so unlike the early Christian church, cannot therefore be illustrated by the symbol as was she. So since the church today is as far from being like the early church as darkness is from light, the holy church of God, symbolized by the second mountain of brass, must yet be in the future. Wherefore let us praise God that now within our reach is the glory of the church triumphant. When will the church really become God's dwelling place? By human effort, it is as impossible to bring about such a change as it is to dry up the ocean. Only God can do it, but when He does, He will certainly make a clean work of it. Now here's another statement in 1TG. I love so much this reading. Here in 1TG number, I think, 51, page 10, it says, here we see that the church militant is in reality the church which is militant against advancing truth. That is the militant churches, they're against advancing truth. That the church triumphant is the church which marches on with the progress of truth. And it says that the church triumphant is the church that which marches on with the progress of truth. So that is the church triumphant, the church that marches on with the progress of truth. And hoping that we are among the church triumphant brothers and sisters that march on with the progress of truth. We will continue this subject, brethren, concerning the focal point of the paradox of the ages, Zechariah chapter 6 verses 1 to 8. And we already explained the first two chariots. The first one lead by the red horses, and the second is lead by the black horses. The significance of the first chariot, we already explained that the first red horse having no destination indicates that they did not left the vineyard. They died all in Jerusalem, and that is the apostolic church. The first section of the early Christian church, because the description of the first chariot, it is called by the shepherds rod the early Christian church. That is the name of that chariot, the early Christian church. And the second section of the early Christian church, represented by the first chariot, is the Ephesus. Although the Ephesus, according to tract number 12, page 43, she left the vineyard, she went into the wilderness, but the significance that there is no destination is that nobody knows where is that specific place by which the woman went from 100 AD to 538 AD. She was out of civilization. Even the devil had not been able to find the location of the woman. And the second chariot is led by black horses. Black represent bondage. But that bondage is the bondage in antitypical Babylon, but in two sections. The Babylon in the old world and the Babylon in the new world. And that is the reason why Hotep, through the dictation of the Holy Ghost, the second chariot, their name is the four great denominations. But it's really wonderful to note that before this light came to us, it seems that Hotep was mistaken. Why is it that he declared that John Wesley is the founder of the Methodist Church, and then Alexander Campbell, the founder of the Baptist Church, by which if you will look at the historical event, brothers and sisters, they are not the founder of these churches. But the absolute truth is that, first, point out to the second chariot to let us know that this chariot is divided into two sections. The four great denominations in the old world and the four great denominations in the new world. But the focal point is the four great denominations in the new world, because that is the only place by which naturally the trees naturally grow. Therefore, the four great denominations in the old world, brothers and sisters, is the groundwork, but the particular object in view is the four great denominations in the new world. Or in other words, since the focal point of the prophecy in Zechariah chapter 6 verses 1 to 8 are to those chariots and to those horses by which God gave destination, therefore, the focal point of this study must be to the second, third, and fourth chariot, brothers and sisters. And it is only made incidentally to the first chariot. And we will discuss that one by one and carefully decipher all the symbolization represented by the second, third, and the fourth chariot. Hoping that you will abide listening and viewing this program, brothers and sisters. We will continue this subject on our episode number 5. On episode number 5. This is our episode number 4. And again, brothers and sisters, we love you, brethren, and we're only duty-bound to proclaim this message because it has graciously placed upon our shoulders, and we are bound to proclaim this message. And we know that if this message is of God, we stand on that, standing the same with Martin Luther. I would like to read that statement in the Great Controversy, page 131. I would like to read that statement, brothers and sisters. The Great Controversy, 131. Again he declared, whatever I do will be done, not by the prudence of men, but by the counsel of God. If the work be of God, who shall stop it? If it be not, who can forward it? Not my will, nor theirs, nor ours, but thy will, O Holy Father, which are in heaven. The Great Controversy, page 131, brothers and sisters. I'm hoping we learn the lesson in the past, brothers and sisters, not to find ourselves fighting against God's message, brothers and sisters. Thank you very much for listening this message. To repeat again, we will continue this subject on our episode number 5, 144,000 going out of Egypt. Thank you very much. May the good Lord bless you and have a wonderful evening.